The Speaker.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I listened intently to the member for Laventille West as he made his presentation early. And it is clear why he cannot visit his constituency without public and private security. Madam Speaker, I believe he would receive a baptism, wetting after wetting. Madam Speaker, I listened to him. I saw hate, Madam Speaker. I saw bitterness, Madam Speaker. I saw anger, Madam Speaker. I saw acrimony, Madam Speaker. I saw nastiness, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I saw a man completely out of control, Madam Speaker. Completely out of control. And it is no wonder, Madam Speaker, that the former Prime Minister, Mr. Mervyn Augustus Manning, never made the member for Laventille West a member in his cabinet. But I would like to ask some questions of the goodly gentleman from Laventille West, Madam Speaker. He talks about him being righteous, and those on that side being righteous and of good nature and character. And I would like to just ask him a question. If he is aware of a certain case in the High Court between Marlon McPherson and one Fitzgerald Hines. This was a court case in which it dated the 15th of June 2011 before the Honorable Madam Justice Jones, where it is hereby ordered the defendant, and the defendant in this case is my colleague from San Fernando, Laventille West. The defendant has to purchase the said portion of the claimant's land encroached on him, on and by him in accordance with the survey plan, etc., etc. And he was ordered to pay $84,393 to the person upon whose land he squatted. This is in the public domain, Madam Speaker. At the same time, can he tell us who is the MP who had to beg NIPDEC? And I'm not casting aspersions on anybody. But could he tell us who is the MP who had to beg NIPDEC to write off over $100,000 in housing loans? Madam Speaker, the principled member for Laventille West talked about no one suffering or committing suicide because of the closure of Petrotrain. Now, we do not revel in this. We do not. But facts are facts, and facts are stubborn things. We will not call names. But it was on the Trinidad Express, August 7, 2019. The head, and I'm saying this because he's challenged us to name anyone. He even sat down and gave us the opportunity to respond. But we would respond. We are responding in the fullness of time. The Trinidad Express, August 7, 2019. Fired worker commits suicide. That was the heading. And they quoted relative as commenting on the death of a former Petrotrain worker. And he said that the man suffered severe depression following the closure of Petrotrain. And I only say this to say that when you take actions that are hurtful to the society, that there are repercussions, there are human repercussions that result from the kind of incompetence and poor decision-making that takes place on the other side. I think he's a psychiatrist, Dr. Varma Diyal Singh, said that losing a job is a most stressful experience. So when you make decisions and you smile and just say 5,000 workers go up, all, don't call me. You're dealing with the lives of human beings. That is the situation in Trinidad and Tobago. He said that CPEP workers were and will be receiving the minimum wage after the 15% increase. Well, Our only response to that is we'll decide that in courts. We have a different view. We win cases in courts, and if, as you say, there's a whole group of individuals who make a livelihood of winning cases in the courts, then so be it. The courts exist to give us justice, Madam Speaker. But I want to go to a significant point. The Prime Minister was quoted last night on television as saying that it was because of prudent fiscal management and cost-cutting by his government that they avoided the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Well, Madam Speaker, Mrs. Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, she had to go to the IMF because when she got into office, there was not a cent of foreign exchange or reserves in the Treasury. Nothing. The previous government left them nothing. So they received a U.S. loan of $292 million from the IMF. And Jamaica, Madam Speaker, did the same thing in 2013, and they received a U.S. 600 or thereabouts loan arrangement from the IMF. So they got 600 in one case and 292. So this incompetent government that we have now did not go to the IMF because we left them over $100 billion in foreign exchange and in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. 100 million, 10 billion in reserves, and close to 6 billion in the Heritage Fund. So what Barbados and Jamaica went to the IMF for, we had 10 times that in terms of the reserves and foreign exchange that we left them. Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate the member for Siparia on her presentation today. It is the first time after leaving the UN that I heard such erudition, such foresight, such instant vision that I thought I was back at the UN. I really thought. I nearly said Madame Gutierrez, but sorry, I realized I am back in Trinidad. I was transformed, Madam Speaker. The member for Siparia gave us today what could only be described as a real budget speech. Yes, it was the real budget speech. She pointed out the woeful inadequacies and incompetence of this Keith Rowley administration. She laid out a roadmap for prosperity, for good governance, and for hope for Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Speaker, you know I have been talking about SMART goals. I have lectured at 3 universities. And yes. And we always talk about goals are not statements of intent. They are specific. They must be measurable. They must be attainable. They must be relevant. And they must be timely. Madam Speaker, you look at on page 57 of the member for Siparia's a seminal address to us, to the country today. She spoke the key targets. She said by 2025, the member for Siparia, she said, create 10,000 new jobs. So that's very specific. That is measurable. That is attainable. And that is timely. You give a time bound. 2025, 10,000 new jobs. The member for Siparia is going to cut the food import bill by $2 billion. Not saying that we're going to cut the food bill, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're hoping that it will work out. A specific, measurable target was set by the member for Siparia. She said, the member said it will generate an additional $1 billion in agricultural exports, and it will increase by 5% agriculture's contribution to the GDP. Specific. This is the kind of thing, the level of erudition that one gets in a first world parliament. And I was transformed today. And no wonder the document is entitled National Economic Transformation Master Plan 2020 to 25. This, Madam Speaker, will take Trinidad and Tobago to the first world. It will take Trinidad. And Madam Speaker, when I talk about Singapore, they think that I am speaking about aspirations to be like Singapore. We want not to be like Singapore, but to exceed Singapore. Singapore must take lessons from us. And this is a roadmap, a master plan to achieve that. Madam Speaker, so visionary was the contribution by the member for Siparia that to steal her thunder, what do you think they did? They call an election. They call an election. When they were exposed to the level of erudition, it was like a class in Harvard University today. They decided they can't deal with this, and I see them fumbling and fidgeting. So they decide what they're going to do is that they're going to call an election. But you cannot fool all the people all the time. Since we all know that they have no plan. The member for Lavantil West made another comment. He said, and the OWTU, and we need to correct the record. We always supported the fact that the OWTU was selected as the preferred bidder. We objected, however, to the way it was done. The fact that the refinery is heavily mortgaged. And lastly, that it should never have been closed down in the first place. Madam Speaker, the last point based on what I heard from the member for Lavantil West, we solved 143 wage negotiations. That is not in dispute. We paid the increased sums when they were necessary to be paid. The member for Siparia did not, when she came to office, she did not cry like a poor me one. She did not cry and blame the P&M. She acted like a man. She acted like a man, had responsibilities, and she stood up to it, faced it, and paid it. They came. True leadership, my colleague has reminded me. True leadership. We here on that side, we left them 143 negotiations, and oh, poor me one, we can't solve it. And they go into their mantra, blame the UNC. Blame the UNC. For once we say, be like a man. They call it man up to your responsibilities. Man up to your responsibilities. Madam Speaker, you see, I got distracted by the diatribe from the contribution for Lavantil West. Nothing of substance. Nothing of substance. Just picking here and shooting there and commenting on this and not giving a vision, an alternative vision, or substantively critiquing what the member for Siparia presented. Cannot do that. So you resort to ad hominem attacks and slippery slope arguments and falsehoods in order to present a contribution. When you analyze it, it amounts to a lot of sound and fury, but it signifies nothing. Yes. So, Madam Speaker. Yeah. It was, Madam Speaker, a most trying experience. I'm getting down to my presentation. Spending 3 hours and 20 minutes to that most garrulous, verbose, loquacious, effusive rambling on Monday last.
Madam Speaker, 53. Standing order 53.
Which one of 43? 53? 53 has 1A to
31B, Madam Speaker.
A member present in the House during the debate shall enter or leave the House with decorum. Order, please. Order. Order. Please continue, Naprima.
Madam Speaker, sometimes I'm reminded, Madam Speaker, sometimes I'm reminded of my primary school days, my preschool days, hearing the bantering from that side that makes no sense. Madam Speaker, I would have liked to give the member for Digo Martin Northeast, I would have liked to give his presentation a passing grade. But given recent events in Penal, I do not wish to make another grave mistake, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the U.S. President, with 300 million citizens and a $4 trillion U.S. economy, takes less than 2 hours on average to deliver their State of the Union address. Madam Speaker, in the United Kingdom, The Chancellor of the Exchequer normally takes 1 hour and 40 minutes.
53(1)(e).
A member present in the House during debate shall enter or leave the House with decorum.
53(1)(e).
Just now. Done. You said 53(1)(e).
I said 53(1)(e). 53(1)(e) shall maintain silence while another speaker is speaking and shall not interrupt.
So you meant E as in egg. I'm sorry, I heard E. All right, so, all right. We've all had lunch and we might have a little extra energy. I ask everyone, members for Port of Spain, North, St. Anne's West, Diego Martin Northeast, and Couva North. All right? So as I was saying, you know, we might have a little extra energy having had lunch, but I would really like we'll channel it into listening so that we'll all get our chance to speak when the time comes. Member for Naparima, continue.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in the United Kingdom, the Chancellor of the Exchequer normally takes 1 hour and 40 minutes for an 800 billion pound economy. Not this Minister of Finance. Here we have the Minister of Finance detaining us with his repetitive, self-congratulatory, overweening ambition to hoodwink and deceive us. His contribution consisted of 23,000 words, with 97 uses of the words "we are," 97 uses of the words "we are," and 75 uses of the word "I," an increase of 11 from the record of 64 last year, Madam Speaker. Surprisingly, he only blamed the UNC 15 times. Normally we get 40, but he was gracious. We got 15 times. He looked to blame the UNC. Madam Speaker, what we did not see in his budget, what we did not see, no measurable targets for reducing the murder rate, none. No significant contribution of sustainable jobs to the economy, none whatsoever. We did not see no new sustainable non-oil revenue streams. We saw no diversification of the economy. We saw no indication of when the Forensic Science Center will become fully accredited, as it is in Singapore. Nothing about that. No time frame for when our foreign exchange will reach the 10.5 billion which we left in 2015. Nothing at all. 3 hours. 3 times what a US president will take to address a whole nation. 3 times what a UK Chancellor of the Exchequer will take to address the fellow citizens of the United Kingdom. No idea, Madam Speaker, of when the 69 early childhood centers built by the UNC will be commissioned and become fully operational. Do not cry crocodile tears about us, tears about us being concerned about the early childhood preschool education. You have 69 schools at the moment collecting vines and homeless people occupying them, and you refuse to open them for 4 years. Madam Speaker, no indication in the budget about when CPEP, URP, and OJT workers will be transitioned out of that temporary arrangement that was stated in the original plan when it was conceived. No idea when they will be transitioned to permanent, sustainable, and well-paying middle-class jobs. Madam Speaker, but we heard from the leader of the opposition the plans to create 56,000 jobs with a roadmap for creating those jobs, Madam Speaker. plans. Facts are stubborn things. Intellect always shows. And all. Madam Speaker, I'm going to send this. I'm going to send this to my colleagues at the UN and Singapore. And I am sure I will get, and I will at the same time send a contribution by the Minister of Finance. And I am sure what they're going to tell me. But you see, they could come in Trinidad, they could come in Parliament and say anything and get away with it. But you cannot fool people who know what they are about. You cannot. No indication of whether we'll avoid a future like Haiti, Madam Speaker, for which we seem headed. And I'll tell you, it hurts me to say that, but I'm going to say it. You know why we saw none of these things? It's plain and simple. The Minister of Finance, and we have to face it in Trinidad and Tobago today, he's a qualified engineer, but he's not a finance man. He has no finance qualifications that will give him the intellectual backdrop to take us out of the morass that we are in, Madam Speaker. I always compare to, they don't like to hear about Singapore, but the Singapore Minister of Finance has an MA in economics from Cambridge University and a master's in public admin from Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University, and was managing director of the Monetary Authority of Singapore.
Okay, so we have a reverb in the chamber. And I would really like the reverb to be switched off. Member for Naparima.
Madam Speaker, I'll get to foreign affairs, the specific area. And I'll get specifically to Trinidad and Tobago's nomination for the positions at the United Nations. When Prime Minister Dr. Rowley returned from his long overdue trip to the United Nations General Assembly, he spoke at a press conference on October the 1st and stated that, and I quote, "We intend at the next opportunity to advance our country for a seat on the Security Council. The actual election for that would be in 2026, Madam Speaker." You see, Madam Speaker, from his statement, one would get the impression that it was his government that was doing the work to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago got a seat on the Security Council in 2026. But facts are stubborn things. And the fact is that all the groundwork for Trinidad and Tobago's nomination for a seat on the Security Council was done when the People's Partnership was in government. And Madam Speaker, I have the evidence and I'll send it to the media. The GRULAC chart. GRULAC is the group of Latin American and Caribbean countries. And it was last updated on the 30th of September 2019. And here what it said. Listed as the sole GRULAC candidate for membership on the Security Council for 2027 to 28 term is Trinidad and Tobago. But more importantly, date of the receipt of the application was the 21st of May 2013, Madam Speaker. Who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2013? A distinguished colleague from Tabakit. And who was the Prime Minister when our nomination was placed? And the records are there at the United Nations.
And who was the ambassador?
And I wouldn't tell them who was the ambassador. I wouldn't tell them. I am a very humble man. I wouldn't tell them. But it gets better. It gets better, Madam Speaker. I will inform those on the other side that listed as the sole candidate for the position of President of the 78th General Assembly for the term 2023 to 2024 is Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Speaker, the date the application was received was the September the 3rd, 2013. Madam Speaker, 2013. You see, we had a vision, Madam Speaker, of global leadership. President of the General Assembly, Trinidad and Tobago must be on the Security Council. We did the action. And at the United Nations, you can't get President of the General Assembly just so. It happens every 5 years. They rotate it among geographic regions. Right? So our term in 2023 to 24 is going to be GRULAC, Group of Latin American and Caribbean countries. So once you put your name, it rotates. And once you put your name and you do your lobbying, so other candidates would not compete with you in the group of Latin American countries, then it is taken as automatic. So Trinidad and Tobago, I announced today, will have a president of the General Assembly of the United Nations in 2023. But, Madam Speaker, you see why I have problems with my colleagues on the other side. I have problems. Yes, great is the UNC. Yes. Trinidad and Tobago is listed among 64 bad-paying countries at the United Nations. So we go in and put in our name for President of the General Assembly and for a membership of the Security Council. But they're not telling us that we are a bad-pay country. You cannot hold your head high at the United Nations when you do not pay your fees, Madam Speaker. Trinidad and Tobago is one of 64 out of 193 countries yet to pay their mandatory annual contribution to the UN's regular budget and working capital fund for this year. According to budget documents, Trinidad and Tobago was supposed to contribute $5.7 million to the UN regular budget and capital fund in 2019. And how much does this revise? When I looked at the revised estimates of expenditure for 2019, how much was allocated? Zilch. Not even a fraction was paid. Moreover, out of $14 million in fees budgeted to be paid to the UN for 2019, the revised estimates for 2019 show that $13.29 million remains unpaid. Madam Speaker, nothing paid towards UN peacekeeping operations. Nothing paid to the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean budgetary support. Nothing paid to the International Criminal Court. Madam Speaker, it's criminal that our former President and Prime Minister, A.N.R. Robinson, was the person who gave birth to the International Criminal Court. President Anthony Carmona was a judge on the Criminal Court. Right now we have a judge, the Honorable, Geoffrey Henderson, he sits on the court. You know how embarrassing it is when you sit on a court and your country is not paying its dues? It's embarrassing. Nothing paid for the UN Central Emergency Response Fund. And, Madam Speaker, nothing paid for the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. We had gentlemen, it's citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, Lennox Bala. We had fellows like Francis Charles sitting on the tribunal, Anthony Lucky, Justice Anthony Lucky. And we're not paying our dues, bad pay. You see, they could bad pay contractors in Trinidad and laugh, kiki, and get away with it. But in the international fora, you have to live up to your responsibilities, Madam Speaker. And it gets worse. In the Commonwealth Secretariat, we are not paying our dues. They cannot be serious. They're a bunch of jokers, Madam Speaker. How can they claim to care about our international image? So this budget, as far as I'm concerned, from the foreign affairs standpoint, is VAPS. You took a figure here, you put in something there, and you hope that you talk fast and you talk nice, and you have your support from your side who will clap, and you get away with it. Madam Speaker, if you look at our budget and our planning and our whatnot from a dispassionate eye, you see issues, you see challenges. Madam Speaker, the government stated intention in the budget to establish an embassy in Qatar. 1.5 million allocated for a site visit as recorded in the PSIP and to look for potential accommodation, and if they find it, make a down payment. Last year, we heard it was Abu Dhabi in UAE, Abu Dhabi, in UAE for a new mission. Why switch to Qatar? Qatar is right now in a conflict with Saudi Arabia. Why do we want to get in there when the world is moving away from a fossil fuel economy? And we are going plump in the center of a fossil environment. What about the establishment of a high commission in Guyana? They claimed to have looked at properties and yet no word on what is being done, if anything at all. Madam Speaker, Guyana will soon become the energy capital of CARICOM. And we should be seeking, yes. We should be seeking to leverage our century-old expertise in energy to the mutual benefit of both of our countries, Madam Speaker. And we hear complaints from Guyanese businessmen last week of major difficulties in accessing our market for meat and agricultural products. For heaven's sake, spent $6 billion in a food import bill. Well, let's spend some with a fellow CARICOM state. Let the money circulate in the region. But there's no foresight, no planning, no thinking by those opposite. Madam Speaker, a few days ago, there was a CARICOM meeting in Barbados with the president of Kenya. Present were the prime ministers, Mia Motley, Alan Chastanet from St. Lucia, ministers representing Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Suriname, and the CARICOM secretariat, Erwin LaRoque, who was not there. Trinidad and Tobago was notably absent or left out, Madam Speaker. What's really going on? What's really going on? If we're not careful, under this administration, Trinidad and Tobago will be irrelevant to what is going on in CARICOM. So we're talking about $5 million in the budget is listed for PSIP for the relocation of the ministry's head office. Is this unnecessary expense at this time? This go overseas, Madam Speaker? Could this $5 million not be better utilized? Venezuelan embassy issues. Maybe a portion of that $5 million would be better served in showing that our staff admissions are paid. Madam Speaker, the Daily Express reported on the 5th October, a couple of days ago, that a Trinidad and Tobago immigration officer based in Caracas, his name is Balro Bipaki, who went to Venezuela in early July, following the moves to impose a visa system in Caracas. Right? He has said he's now in dire straits and forced to live out of his own pocket as his monthly foreign service allowance is not being paid, has never been paid since he arrived in Venezuela. So our embassy staff in Venezuela cannot buy even arepas. I understand that the families have to send doubles for them to make sure they eat it. Madam Speaker, what a shame. This is a country of which I am greatly proud. And when I talk to my friends outside, it is almost like a laughing stock where how Trinidad has reached, what has happened, what has befallen us, what sin have we committed. I know what the sin we have committed. They sit next door. So that the Minister of Everything, Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, has already issued a statement from the Ministry of National Security, because immigration, gentleman is an immigration officer, that over 1,900 visas have been granted up until the beginning of October, and that work has not stopped. That is inconsistent from what we're hearing from the Caracas embassy. Could it be, once again, that the left hand don't know in this government what the right hand is doing, and therefore we are left confused? But the registration process, Madam Speaker. After the registration process, even though many Venezuelans are registered, 1,600 I'm told, we are still faced the fundamental question of how many Venezuelans reside in our country. As usual under this government, we have no accurate data. No statistics on how many are here. Yet they're telling the BBC that their figures are wrong. If you're telling somebody your figure's wrong, it means I have a figure. Right? We do not have a figure. Nobody on that side. So we run in a country. This is our country, and we do not know how many people in that bedroom or sleeping downstairs. We have to get serious, Madam Speaker. With no real lockdown of our borders, we are left vulnerable in terms of the refugee crisis and human rights concern. And let us always say, we are concerned that the Venezuelans are treated humanely. But we are saying that the process must be transparent and it must be able to stand scrutiny. It must be consistent with best practices. So, Madam Speaker, No consultation with any global refugee organization before addressing the Venezuelan crisis. Government claims most of the Venezuelans registered, while the entire country suspects that over 40,000 Venezuelans are living here, and the numbers are growing daily. No healthcare policy for these persons. No education plan for their children. No plan for what happens next year. We'll rush to the parliament and say the year has finished, and the government, after looking at it, we have decided whatever they decide, or they get up in the morning and decide. Serious country would have had a registration. No, stage 1 is this, stage 2 is that, stage 3 is that, so that we all sit like first world countries and we can talk with confidence based on well thought out, comprehensive policy decisions. Madam Speaker, no control at the borders to restrict criminals from entering. No plan to this is critical. No plan to utilize their skills base to offset our own deficiencies. Madam Speaker, one of the 16,000 plus Venezuelans may be a forensic pathologist. And we need for the forensic pathologist, we should have picked up his qualifications, picked up whether he's credited, and ship him there so that we could deal with crime once and for all. But you see, that requires a level of imagination, critical thinking, level of analysis, level of reading, and level of vision. Madam Speaker, thanks very much. Vision. No vision, no plan. So you could tell me what you would, you could fool me, but you cannot fool Trinidad and Tobago. And you are doing a disservice to our country and to generations yet unborn. So in terms of our image and international thing, it is bad, Madam Speaker. In the last few years, the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia have all issued travel advisories to Trinidad and Tobago, warning about increased levels of crime. Britain's Foreign and Commonwealth Office travel advisory on Trinidad and Tobago, 28 June 2019, warned citizens of high levels of violent crime. Multiple travel advisories warn potential tourists that, and I quote, I'm quoting here, shootings, kidnappings, and other gang and drug-related violence occur. And there is risk of you being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That can happen to any of us. All of us could be at the wrong place at the wrong time. You sit in a pub in Trinidad and you see somebody coming with a hoodie and your blood pressure goes up. So a lot of us walk with our blood pressure tablets because of the incompetence of this government on the other side. They only talk. They do not perform, Madam Speaker. Talk, do not perform. Coast Guard. And if that wasn't enough, the Coast Guard, I call it. And may I say, we have nothing against the officers in the Coast Guard. We feel they are poorly managed. We feel that they're not given policy prescriptions so they could operate optimally. And we feel that they are under-resourced, Madam Speaker. That is the reality. The question is, why are they always nowhere to be found when our fishermen are under attack? Last night I was listening on TV to a gentleman who was kidnapped and he was released. And he is saying that in his view, that is better, that and nothing, the Coast Guard we have and nothing is the same. And I'm not saying this with joy. I'm saying that I'm sure the officers want to perform. They want to be of service. So the fishermen could say, the Coast Guard is our friend and we can work together. And the question I ask, why can we not give one example that when fishermen are subject to piracy, that the Coast Guard has intervened, captured the pirates, and freed our fishermen who are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago? Madam Speaker, crime. In this budget, we see no vision or clear plan to combat the criminal elements. All we see are frills, superficial promises that will only assist in locking up the small man, but not in addressing the underlying causes for him to resort to crime. Nothing aimed at catching the financiers of crime. And the big fish. The big fish. Madam Speaker, we hear talk. El Capo, something that Mr. Manning said. A tutti capo, big words. We hear on that side, we're passing legislation to catch white-collar crime. Madam Speaker, talk a little bit about that. So while people are being slaughtered on our streets, in their homes, and at their workplaces, the Prime Minister continues to fail to provide any measure of comfort to us as citizens. Talk and talk, but they do not perform, Madam Speaker. And we have an Attorney General who's an expert on passing legislation after legislation. A suite, he likes that word, a suite of legislation. Madam Speaker, I have to ask, what is the benefit? You see, when we talk about targets, measurable, achievable, attainable, what is the measurable achievement of all this legislation? What are the concrete results? Yes, arrests have been made, Madam Speaker, under the anti-gang law. Arrests have been made, but arrests do not equate to convictions. Madam Speaker, I would say the law is working. You have arrested, you have convicted 40 persons, and I would say that that is some result. So in my book, there has been no result, no measurable result, and we see it in crime. The government has our police officers sharing non-lethal weapons. The member for Siparia spoke about that. 300 body cameras for close to 7,000 police officers. It equates to less than 4% of the TPS. So we achieved, but 4% walking around with body cameras, and the rest doing what we knew before. You see, I can't, which is getting involved with a community, there's conflict, and there's no evidence, no visual evidence to say that the police acted appropriately or the citizens were in fault. Madam Speaker, technology such as drones, pepper sprays, tasers should be supplied in greater quantities for it to have a measurable impact, not PR thing, to say you bring 100 and most of the 7,000 people do not have body cameras or tasers. For years, we have heard rhetoric that the government had to be frugal in its spending and give value for money. But it is clear this is not true. For national security and the TTPS combined, the UNC spent $21.19 billion. We spent $21 billion. Guess how much they spent? They spent $28.31 billion. Madam Speaker, spent, and in 2020 they have allocated, when you take that allocation of 5.87 billion, it's going to work out to 28 billion. So they spent 7.1 billion more than we spent. But crime was lower when we were in office, Madam Speaker. You see, during our term in office, the statistics show that we were making headway in the fight against crime. Soon as they came into office, crime rate shot up, and today it is now worse than ever. So 7.12 billion more spent, and they have nothing to show for it. They talk and show borrowed money at problems. Not real money, borrowed money. Bonds here, this here, NIF there. They're borrowing money. They're paying off housing debt by borrowing money from the citizens to pay off the debt. That reminds me of my partner. And he's been in every credit union in Trinidad. He got debt here, he will join that credit union, he pay that debt. He joined that credit union, he paid that debt. He joined that credit union. He at the same place, a lot of sound and fury, but signifying nothing to people who have the capacity to think. Sometimes I should not have gone to school, sometimes because better to sit and ignore and take it and have a nice time. Because when you see Trinidad going nowhere, when it dawns on you that those opposite, probably well-intentioned, but they don't know what they're doing. They don't know whereof they speak. And once you understand that, you get scared, Madam Speaker. You get scared. Madam Speaker, I have spoken. They will distort it, so I will say precisely what I'm saying. Mass incarceration is a problem globally, mostly in the United States. And I am not talking about attribute. I am not dog whistling. I am stating the fact. The government fails to realize that jailing is not the answer. What is the big picture with these citizens? Some of whom are innocent. In remand yard, Madam Speaker, some are innocent. And after they go to jail for years and return to society, then what? what benefits does mass incarceration bring? Yes, we may have, and if people have done wrong, they should be jailed. But I am saying a policy that is premised on jailing more and more people without any analysis and not comprehending the unintended consequences can lead us to irreparable problems down the line, Madam Speaker. They are not thinking about the consequences. You bring more legislation, you bring more harsh fees, you lock up more people, and we have performed. We are great. We have jailed people. But children losing one or more parent to incarceration can set a child up for a life of poverty and detrimental mental health issues. Communities that suffer from high rates of mass incarceration have no rehabilitative institutions in their communities. Thus, children often experience their first arrest in the early teenage years, children of persons in prison. Madam Speaker, in the 6th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on the impact of mental health and family life of remandees.
Member Fanaprima, your original time is now spent. You have 10 more minutes to wrap up. Yes.
10 more minutes. It is reported, right. In first world countries, there are systems in place where inmates have an account and can earn money in order to buy items from the commissary. Commissary is like a prison parlor. In Trinidad and Tobago, prisoners do not have access to the store. There's no means for them to purchase except through visitors. So if your loved one goes to prison and you are unable to physically go to prison, you'll not be able to add money to the inmate's account so that he can make purchases. This puts extra strain on the remandee's family. And I see these women, Madam Speaker, it hurt in San Fernando, and you see these poor people with a bag of things to hand to, and they're trying. And I'm saying, you know, there must be a better way. There must be a better way. According to the Trinidad and Tobago prison website, commissary prices can be 20 to 50% higher than on the outside. So, Madam, and I'm quoting here from the Post, the price for items is very different from the outside. Water, for instance, is $5 in the store, that is outside, and $9 in the commissary. Be prepared to pay almost double for some things. Speaker, you know, I'll go. Okay. We are not saying to go soft on criminals, but there must be 1,001 plus opportunities for somebody who has slipped through the crack to come back into society and live a fulfilling and rewarding life. So let us bring more legislation and feed our jails and overwhelm our remand yard. That cannot be a policy that makes sense. It costs $20,000 to $25,000 per month to keep a prisoner in remand yard. That was given by the Attorney General. It can reach up to $50 million per month for 2,250 prisoners and billions stretching over the years. And nobody on that side would sit down and say, listen, this is money going down the drain, and therefore let us see what we could do to reorganize it. But, Madam Speaker, it is estimated that there are probably 4,000 children of remandees in society. And we have to be concerned. And we ask, what is being done for these 4,500? Not financial, but mental and social support. What is being done to provide father figures, men who are positive role models? What is the allocation towards guidance counselors in school? And I'll ask my colleague to look at that. But that is a problem. What is being done to encourage young men to become teachers? Minister of Education. I understand that the gender imbalance and teachers in primary school is something like 75% female, 25% male. So if you have a male without a father figure going into a primary school, he has no responsible male figure like we had Mr. London, Mr. White, and a whole set of others we could pattern your life after. Madam Speaker, they talk and talk and they talk. So we need to focus on existing laws, focus on measurable targets for crime, police response time, recidivism and rehabilitation, trials before courts, reducing murders, shortening the time. But, Madam Speaker, I have a concern for a government that has to stop this pipeline of poor males going to prison. So when I look at the budget, this budget, our cadet force, Madam Speaker, almost 3/4 of the 2019 allocation was not spent for goods and services and minor equipment purchases. Vision and Mission, whose mandate is to reintegrate and rehabilitate prisoners, etc., half their budget was unspent in 2019. Madam Speaker, Milat, 5 million unspent in 2019. Police youth clubs, half their allocation was unspent. Trinidad and Tobago Police Academy, half unspent. 4-H Farmers Clubs, a measly 60,000 spent out of 250,000. Youth apprenticeship programs in agriculture, nothing spent. Rehabilitative programs under the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, 8.5 million allocated, 383,000 spent. Jesus, sorry. But the SSA, the spy agency, you know, and Madam Speaker, I just said, when we write our speeches now, we don't send it email. We have been warned. I say no more. But the SSA, the spy agency, receives a whopping $198 million for 2020. The little boys who looking for hope, who have no father figure, and who depending on this government to help them, the money goes into locking up people, the money goes into the SSA. They cannot be serious. Forensic Science Center. Madam Speaker, we know the problems. I wouldn't reiterate them here. I wouldn't repeat them here. But I ask one question. We have no idea of how many pathologists are needed to meet international standards and what steps we are taking to make it happen. We just hear we are pointing to and we're recruiting a pathologist, but we do not know how many are needed in order to become accredited. Madam Speaker, they don't like to hear it, but in Singapore, forensic science laboratories achieve accreditation by the American Society for Crime Laboratory Directors Accreditation Board. We ain't there yet. We ain't getting there yet, but we're talking about crime and solving crime. We talk about murders, I don't want to go in there, and etc. Madam Speaker, my constituency in the remaining time I have, the problems we met with about 1,000 of the constituents. We were mandated by the leader. Unemployment are the issues. Madam Speaker, anecdotal evidence is suggesting that the underemployment and unemployment rate in Naparima exceeds 35%, Madam Speaker. Water woes. And I'm calling the names because I want them to listen when they start to blame us. St. Cross Road, Lengua Road, Sahai Trace, Satar Avenue, Kanhai Road, Gas Road, and Coriel Road. No water sometimes for months, Madam Speaker. Deplorable roads. They have named the highway Ghat Road. They have renamed it the Culm Imbert Boulevard. And they have signs all over on the road. The most potholes in Trinidad and Tobago. PTRC allocation. They get 1.5 million, Madam Speaker, for 700 secondary roads and agricultural traces. It works out at $1,000 per trace in Naparima, Princestown, and Maruga Tableland. 1,000 per trace. That is Trinidad and Tobago. And we talk about agriculture, and we're doing this, and we're creating agro-processing plant in Maruga and whatnot. 1,000 per trace. Health centers, Madam Speaker. Health centers, no medicine. I challenge you, Madam Speaker, to go to the Lengua Health Facility, not you, I challenge anybody in Trinidad who is listening to go right now to the Lengua Health Facility and seek to get medicine for diabetes, high blood pressure, and cancer. They are not going to get, regardless of the utterances we hear in this House, Madam Speaker. Schools, Reform Hindu, Ben Lamont Early Childhood Center, and the Reform Early Childhood, vines growing over. I've said this every budget speech. Flooding. Madam Speaker, I want to Liaquat Dowlat, owner of Dowlat Farm, located at South Oropuch Road, Barkport, lost 20,000 chickens in 2017. And I want him to hear because they think we are not advancing their case. He lost hundreds more while trying to evacuate his livestock last year during the flooding because the roadway collapsed due to floods and his truck slipped into the water. He has received not a single cent of compensation from this government, notwithstanding what they say, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this government is shameless. They have fired over 50,000 workers. They have caused countless businesses to shut down due to lack of foreign exchange and a smaller customer base. They have increased hopelessness among the society. Madam Speaker, make no mistake, however, it was UNC policies which improved the lives of the hard-working citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. It was UNC policies, not PNM, and I repeat, not PNM, which give the people of Trinidad and Tobago hope for a future for themselves and for their children. As the old people say, you cannot plant corn and expect to reap pigeon peas. You cannot vote this incompetent PNM and expect prosperity, happiness, and a fulfilling and worthwhile life. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to join this debate, and I'd like to go very quickly into a structured presentation. Firstly, I intend to address some glaring inconsistencies in the contribution by the member for Siparia, touching some of the equal inconsistencies offered by Naparima. Secondly, to then speak to the issue of crime and the economy through the lens of the Attorney General and the Ministry of Legal Affairs. And thirdly, to speak to issues in my constituency, San Fernando West. I must say, Madam Speaker, that my first order of priority is to give commendation to Prime Minister Keith Rowley, the member for Diego Martin West, to the Minister of Finance, the member for Diego Martin Northeast, and of course to the structural arrangements by the Minister of Planning for Aruka Maloney. And I'll tell you why I say that as quickly as I ought to. It is not an easy situation to have managed the financial situation of Trinidad and Tobago in the time that Prime Minister Rowley led and has led and will continue to lead our government well into the next decade. I'll say why. Quite simply put, precipitous decline in revenue is something that is real. Diversification is something that is hinged into success only when your main plantation structures can actually feed that drive. Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia effectively said, accept the UNC quote-unquote plan. The member for Siparia says that the UNC plan, quite simply put, is to create 50,000 jobs, to stimulate the economy by the removal of taxation. And Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia says that that will be done, listen to this, that will be done by increasing the repo rate at the central bank. In other words then, telling the central bank to raise the cost of borrowings in Trinidad and Tobago for the average householder. Mortgages go up, personal loans go up, tuition borrowings go up, vacation expenses go up, living expenses go up. The member for Siparia says, raise the repo rate. And devalue the dollar. The member then says, Madam Speaker, that Trinidad and Tobago effectively ought to devalue its currency. So the UNC mainstay driving force of this economy, translated, is simply raise the repo rate, raise the cost of borrowings, and devalue the dollar. Imagine that, that is exactly what the member said. That's what you said. The member then says that Trinidad and Tobago is to also find itself in the predicament of having to rely upon underwriting the expense of this new economy. Because the member stood up and said, build highways all over Trinidad and Tobago, construct new initiatives all over Trinidad and Tobago, raise repo rate, etc. And the member says that that is to be funded, Madam Speaker, listen how that's to be funded, by a diaspora fund. That, for people who don't understand what it means tell people outside of Trinidad and Tobago, bring your money back into Trinidad and Tobago. The only way that that could work is to offer a bond so that they could park it, but the bond must be backed by assets. So when the Minister of Finance introduced NIF and packaged NIF with a basket full of assets, Angostura, Republic Bank, etc., local assets that the government managed to take in the trade-off for CLICO, the member for Siparia called that a Ponzi scheme, told people don't invest. Thank the Lord that Trinidad and Tobago has a sensible population. It was oversubscribed by multiple times, but the member has not said to the people of Trinidad and Tobago how these bonds are to be backed. The member then says that the funding for the UNC vision for 2020 to 2025 will also be done by taking WASA and TNTech, taking their debts and putting them into a special purpose company. Madam Speaker, I must ask myself now, on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, was the member for Siparia awake at any cabinet meeting while she was the Prime Minister? Because WASA doesn't have a debt management problem. WASA has an expense management problem with over $2 billion in subsidy for wages and recurrent expenses. The debts due at WASA, if any at all, are because successive governments, including this government, have traded the subsidy. We've taken tax-paying dollars, we've taken earnings, and we've said to people, leave your water rates where they are for now. Leave your electricity rates where they are for now. So it is incumbent to unearth the arrant nonsense of the argument put forward by the member for Siparia, because there is no way on this earth that one can develop a country in the fashion suggested by Siparia if, Madam Speaker, you don't have the money to do it. So, Madam Speaker, permit me to address just a few more things that Siparia said that are just plain wrong. Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia comes forward and tells Trinidad and Tobago that, first of all, she, the honorable member, is going to court to sue because CPEP and URP wages are going to be lower than the minimum wage. Just let me deal with that very quickly. Madam Speaker, the civil proceedings rules fortunately have an amendment to them, and they allow for something called wasted costs. If a lawyer is uneducated enough to pursue a cause of action that has no grounding at all, the court can order the lawyer to pay the fines and fees personally. I look forward on behalf of the taxpayers of this country to taking a wasted cost order application against Siparia. Why? CPEP and URP are extrapolated on the back of the minimum wage. When the Minister of Finance says there's a 15% increase in URP and CPEP wages, it's 15% beyond the minimum wage, whatever that might be. In other words, then, Madam Speaker, it's a formula. So I will say to Siparia, bring on the application, be met with a wasted cost order, and be prepared to pay the money yourself. Madam Speaker, the second thing that the member said that is just completely wrong, false, dangerous, misleading, is the member came here and tried to drop a pseudo-bomb. As the member for Maruga Tableland often says, it ain't no bomb that dropped. It was a fun snap. The member came to this house and said that and tried to implicate the Minister of Finance and said the Integrity Commission should investigate the issue of the sale of the traditional life insurance policies from CLICO. And the member says the Minister of Finance must stand up and tell the country how he approved that process. Madam Speaker, Siparia saw it fit to bestow onto herself senior counsel, former Prime Minister that presided over CLICO for 5 years. Siparia was the leader of the cabinet. Siparia was a past Attorney General, Minister of Legal Affairs, Minister of Education, and Siparia cannot read Section 44D of the Central Bank Act, where the process is that the central bank admitted into the equation under emergency power regulation to deal with CLICO. The central bank has the responsibility of negotiating the CLICO sale, managing the sale, determining the price, getting the valuation. The Minister of Finance, in exercise of his responsibilities at law, only steps into the equation at the very end of the process to look at the national position. And Madam Speaker, again, I welcome Siparia's tirade because it will be met with another wasted cost order. So don't attempt to come to this Parliament, most respectfully, Madam Speaker, and raise that degree of nonsensical argument to try and implicate the Minister of Finance in a fantasy that just does not exist. Madam Speaker, there's another fantasy. The member said, and the member for St. Joseph stood up and asked the member to quote the source of the member's position on this matter. You quite correctly stepped in and said the member need not give unless it's for Hansard record. The member came and said to Trinidad and Tobago that this government raided the Heritage and Stabilization Fund and took out $4.2 billion US dollars. When we asked for that position, the member said it was in a footnote to her speech. How a footnote to an oral speech works, I don't quite understand. But Madam Speaker, the Heritage and Stabilization Fund at March 2009 stood at roughly $3 billion US dollars. At 2019 July, it stands at close to $6 billion US dollars. Madam Speaker, 6.25. If this government were to have taken $4.25 billion US dollars from that fund, it would have been completely disabled and eradicated. And Madam Speaker, that exercise in fantasy and dishonesty which has gone out into the public domain has to be corrected, Madam Speaker. That is not the case. Footnote my foot, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's a third issue that I'd like to touch. The honourable member.
I stand on 48.6. He was referring to the leader of the opposition and using the word dishonesty. In other words, linking dishonesty to the leader of the opposition. I stand on 48.6.
Attorney General, just withdraw that word and continue.
Madam Speaker, what was said is untrue, incorrect, patently wrong, deliberate, said on multiple occasions, repeated, and then compounded, Madam Speaker, and therefore it is intended, in my humble opinion, by way of argument coming from the leader of the opposition, to mislead the country in what is in effect to be apprehended as a dishonest statement, Madam Speaker. I hope I've clarified that for my learned colleague, the member for Caroni East. Madam Speaker, the other point that I'd like to get on to quickly before I get into the other matters that I've signaled, Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia, again with the capacity of her history, comes to this Parliament and says that the Petrotrin debt, Madam Speaker, is an incredible situation to be managed. The honourable member came and read supposedly from a deed of debenture done with First Caribbean, comes to say that 3 companies mortgaged the Petrotrin assets and that the OWTU, in its capacity as a proposed purchaser for the refinery, is going to find itself in deep trouble because the Minister of Finance will not be able to give the refinery, when Petrotrin comes to that position, if it does, that it will not be able to go debt-free. First of all, I'd like to tell the honourable member, it wasn't 3 companies, Madam Speaker, it was 4. So get your facts straight. The honourable member for Diego Martin, Northeast, the Minister of Finance, came to this country and congratulated Petrotrin on doing the impossible. Every international agency said that the management of that $850 million US dollar bond and its refinancing was not capable of being done, and effectively that the government would have to have swallowed the debt, meaning the government would have to have put that debt on its books. The minister said in plain English that he congratulated the Petrotrin team for getting that done without a government guarantee. Madam Speaker, money is not given without collateral. And as a lawyer, Siparia ought to know that that is a basic tenet of lending. And therefore, it is axiomatic that there would have been an underwriting of the assets, a charge on the assets. But Madam Speaker, when the Minister of Finance says that Petrotrin will be given in its refinery disposition debt-free. That is just a matter of a release of a part of the assets and a replacement of security, Madam Speaker. And I dare say the replacement of that security now is an easier target. Why? Because of the courage of the member for Diego Martin West. $2 billion a year was stopped from being lost. In 1/2 of a year, we have turned into a profitable position of nearly $500 million. And that's heritage alone. In those circumstances, a bank would now see Heritage's position, the larger group position, as a profitable one, Madam Speaker, and one can easily, ABC of the law of financing, clearly lost upon the member for Siparia. This is an easy situation to be dealt with. Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia says, let's get TNT working again. And here is where I begin my deep submission, having answered these, and I will come back to interactions of the member's speech in the relevant positions of my own contribution. I want to put on the record and ask people during the course of my delivery to remember this. UNC submission, get TNT working again. And I say, as I am about to embark upon my venture, the question for Trinidad and Tobago is get working for who? And I would like to put my submission that Trinidad and Tobago is now faced with a PNM position, a governmental position, which I would like to encapsulate in the use of one word. We offer the word value, because our policies and positions are to be measured by way of technical compliance, meaning do we have structures and remedies to do something, and then they must be measured by way of deliverable outcomes. And Madam Speaker, my own submission is that there is value in the structural approach that we have taken. And I'd like to get now to what Naparima was touching on, which is crime. Madam Speaker, there are two burning issues in this country. The first one is the economic position, which I think the Minister of Finance has dealt with in the delivery of his budget. The second one is pegged to the issue of crime. Madam Speaker, both of these two require the operation of something called confidence. An economy can have all the money in the world. If there is no confidence in the economy, it will not prosper. You can have all of the support in terms of national security, in terms of legislation. If there's no confidence in the system, you are going to destroy the effort. Madam Speaker, picture this for a moment. Every leading all-time rock star movie that is war-based, historical or otherwise, usually has a protagonist, a main lead that stands in front of the troops. Picture Mel Gibson in Braveheart with the blue paint and white across his face. Picture Maximus in the movie The Gladiator as he stood before the hordes or in the Colosseum. All of these generals, all of these people that took on the war on crime or injustice stood before their troops. Churchill historically so. And what did they do? Mandela and apartheid, what did they do? They stood there and they extolled the virtues of their suggestion, of their position, the virtues of their fight. They then rallied the courage in the hearts and weak knees of their troops. But Madam Speaker, they did not stand on the battle mount on horseback and point out to their troops, you troops, flank on the left. Your knees are shaking. Your horses are sick. You are starved. There is nothing for you. Just over the hill, you have one shot in your pistol and you will miss. Madam Speaker, you catch where I'm going to? The UNC offers this country, and indeed I dare say many other people say to our country, go to war, pick the hill you will die on, and then talk your troops. And Madam Speaker, let us now offer the remedy to that situation. The UNC speaks of a crime plan. I understand that. We in the PNM speak of an anti-crime plan. Madam Speaker, the anti-crime plan that Naparima asked for is to be delivered not in a budget speech. Naparima need only have reflected upon the legislation and suite of legislation. He sought to mock my reference to the interoperability of law and the organizational operationalization of it. Naparima then stood up there and said, I accept that the Anti-Gang Act is working and that the law passed, but we're not seeing any results. Where is Naparima to witness the arrest of 15 gang members? Where is Naparima to witness so-called big fish standing before the court? Where's the front page of our newspaper on these issues, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, let's get to what works. What is the criminal justice system? What have we done as a parliament? The criminal justice system requires the interoperation of laws, bodies in places to deliver a result, acquittal or conviction. In Trinidad and Tobago, the problem is it takes too long. Crime, therefore, does not become something managed by way of deterrence, because if you do the crime, you ought to do the time. But how does that work in a system where it's 20 years long in the cycle? Madam Speaker, the first layer of managing crime in this country that this government has dealt with is to treat with it logically. You cannot change your society unless you deal with plant, machinery, people, processes, and law. Let me repeat that. Plant, machinery, people, processes, and law. And Madam Speaker, when we came to the country in 2015, the first exercise done in the Office of the Attorney General was to speak about the prison system. We went into the data. We showed how many people were there, how long they were there. You just heard Naparima quoting my own statistics, the government statistics, as to how much it costs per head and the billions spent in incarcerating people on remand. We went there because the prison is a litmus test to show you how your system is working or not. Madam Speaker, in treating with that position, we now know as a matter of fact, we have 29,000 preliminary inquiries in arrears. We have 140,000 cases per year on average coming to the magistrate's court. We have 36 judges at the High Court. We have 43 magistrates in the magistracy. We have 12 Court of Appeal judges when we came into office. Madam Speaker, when we came into office, there were 2 masters of the High Court. Madam Speaker, when we came into the office, there was a criminal side of the equation and there was a civil side of the equation. Madam Speaker, in dealing with plant and machinery, people and processes as the core to making law work, let me tell you what this government has done in relation to legislation and operation. First of all, Madam Speaker, the first thing we recognized is you can't have a trial if you don't have judges. And Madam Speaker, when we dealt with judges, I put on record Family and Children Division Bill, Act number 16, number 6 of 2016. Secondly, miscellaneous provisions, Supreme Court of Judica and Children, Act 2018, number 15 of 2018. And I put, Madam Speaker, on the record the following. Those 2 pieces of law birthed, Madam Speaker, the ability to move judicial complement from 36 judges to 64 in the High Court, from 12 Court of Appeal judges to 15. And Madam Speaker, the second aspect after you create the capacity for judges is where you're getting them from. Those judges, by those pieces of law, can now come from the Commonwealth, not just from limited jurisdictions. Madam Speaker, when you have judges, what is next to be considered in the criminal justice system is where are you putting them? The UNC talks about courts. We're forgetting that Section 34 was built on the back of creating courts, masters, and structures. That's the Preliminary Inquiries Abolition Law, Act number 11 of 2011. Madam Speaker, when that came into operation, I can tell you now that the United National Congress government talked about crime and didn't open a single courtroom in Trinidad and Tobago after spending nearly $400 billion in this economy. Let me tell you what we have done. Madam Speaker, we have already now hired 19 masters in the High Court. Let me repeat that. We went from 2 masters to 19 masters. How did that happen? The masters are intended to case manage the equation. Madam Speaker, we opened the Children's Court Faizabad, we opened the Children's Court St. Clair, and in the 4 courts each that stand there, that's 8 courtrooms. Madam Speaker, in treating with the position of courts, we also saw the need to create more divisional structures, and the Honorable Prime Minister announced to this country the decanting of the Parliament from this site across to the Red House. And Madam Speaker, that allows the civil division of the High Court to move here. And Madam Speaker, do you know what that results in? The opening in this life of this government of 65 court hearings, hearing rooms, chamber court applications at the Hall of Justice. So let me add that up. 8 plus 65, Madam Speaker, is where we are at 73 courts, Madam Speaker, to treat with crime. Madam Speaker, let's go further. Where is the magistracy going? The UNC talks about courts and justice and positions. Madam Speaker, let me tell you what we have done. Madam Speaker, when we treat about the courts, I'd like to say that we have already allocated and are in the course of building out the superior courts. We have already vested into the judiciary the land which was lying idle in the AG's office at Irving Park in San Fernando, right in my constituency, for the establishment of a brand new magistrates court in San Fernando. We've added into that, Madam Speaker, Rio Claro. We've dealt with Penal, Madam Speaker. We have opened already the Children's Court in Tobago, and that was opened just last week. So, Madam Speaker, while they're talking and talking and talking, I am now telling you, Madam Speaker, about bricks and mortar tied into legislation. But, Madam Speaker, forget bricks and mortar and judges. Who's going to run the court? How are you going to run the court, Madam Speaker? Let me tell you what we did, not what we're thinking about doing and have not thought out as the UNC offers as an alternative, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, our cabinet did something which was dynamic. Madam Speaker, when we came in, we realized that the judiciary needed assistance in reorganization. We created a family and children division, a criminal division, a civil division, and a probate division will come this year. And in creating those structures, Madam Speaker, after you have judges and you have places, bodies are required. Madam Speaker, I put on the record now. We have created 357 positions. Let me repeat that. 357 positions for the criminal court. A similar number in the family court, children court arrangement, Madam Speaker. In other words then, we're talking about the creation of approximately 600 positions to run. Why? In creating the criminal division, Madam Speaker, we said it was nonsensical for matters to take 4 and 5 years to transfer between the magistracy and the High Court. We said that the magistrates court needed to operate in a particular system: judicial research assistants, judicial support officers, clerks, orderlies. We said that you needed a registrar to run the court. We said justices of the peace needed to be legally qualified. Madam Speaker, I can tell you today, all of that has begun. The criminal division is in operation, Madam Speaker. So I'm not talking about guess and calculate and miss, coulda, woulda, and slogan. 5 years and 3 months the members opposite had $400 billion, not a court open, not a body hired, not a law amended. But Madam Speaker, let's get deeper. We've been talking about night court for years in this country. Madam Speaker, you don't need night court and day court, you know. You need a cause list. You need somebody to manage the cause list, hence the masters. When you create the list and you judicially manage cases, Madam Speaker, they have to operate in a rules-based environment. When we came into office, we had the civil proceedings rules and the family proceedings rules, Madam Speaker. You will recall that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we didn't stop there, you know. We added in the children's rules. We added in, Madam Speaker, the criminal proceedings rules in 2016. We added in the probate rules, Madam Speaker. So while they talk, I can speak now and tell you what we have done, Madam Speaker. And what have the criminal proceedings rules yielded? Naparima runs from the chamber, not even here to listen. Madam Speaker, the judiciary's annual report has already testified that the criminal disposition has jumped by 44% in the criminal arena. But Madam Speaker, we didn't stop there. Trials need to move faster. That's why we came up with judge only. That's why we came up with plea bargaining. And whilst the UNC mocked those two pieces of law, I can say now as Attorney General, as a member of this government, we've had 5 judge-alone trials. The first one, done by Madam Justice Lucky, was a murder trial. The UNC's position in opposition to that law, as they stoutly refused to support that law, nobody would use the law. Nobody, especially nobody, in the criminal arena charged for murder. Well, Madam Speaker, we have made history in this country by the use of judge-only trials. Secondly, Madam Speaker, they said when we proposed that plea bargaining needed to be arranged, because you want to get people faster to the dock. Those that don't need to be there can be filtered out in a system called maximum sentence indication or Goodyear principles, as well as with plea bargaining. Madam Speaker, we did 400 maximum sentence indications in 1 month alone last year, August. 400 in 1 month alone. Madam Speaker, the first plea bargaining case to make history in this country is a case involving criminal charges for senior members of the UNC, Madam Speaker. Made history with plea bargaining. I won't go into it, it's sub judice, but I'm speaking about the plea bargaining law, Madam Speaker. Rodney Charles, honorable member that he is, member for Naparima, wants to know about deliverables, Madam Speaker. I wish he was here and had the courage to listen to deliverables, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let's go further. You're in the courtroom. You have the judge, you have the rules, you have the environment. Madam Speaker, where's the prosecutor? Let me tell you what we did, Madam Speaker, because a trial can't go on without a prosecutor. Madam Speaker, I refer you to the Criminal Division Act, which is in operation, and I refer you particularly, Madam Speaker, to the fact that we did 2 things. Number 1, we took to the DPP on the process side and said, DPP, you've been far too long begging for staff and for buildings. We have already opened the DPP Tobago office. We didn't talk about it, we did it. We have secured, and it is in the process of build out, the DPP San Fernando offices at Gulf City. The DPP Park Street office for Port of Spain is being built out by UDICOT as we speak now. Madam Speaker, we increased the staff of the judiciary. We went from 27% of staff filled to 40%. And every single post after that will be filled as soon as we have the accommodation for it. All of this, Madam Speaker, not coulda, woulda, shoulda, and slogan. These are things that have been delivered, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the judiciary's report demonstrates in its criminal dispositions, and I invite everybody to read Transformation for Enhanced Delivery, the annual report of the judiciary 2018-2019. I'll read one thing. Listen to this. The magistracy stands on the threshold of its single greatest change in 150 years as the criminal court package of bespoke court case rolls out. Not my words, Madam Speaker. The judiciary speaking, I apologize for raising it, the judiciary speaking to this. But in this book, Madam Speaker, there's a very powerful statistic that treats in the criminal disposition of matters that says to us, when they disaggregate the reasons for delay in criminal trials, Madam Speaker, 90% of the reasons are because of the unavailability of defense counsel. There are approximately 20 lawyers that control the criminal bar. And Madam Speaker, we didn't talk about it. Here's what we did, Madam Speaker. This cabinet, under this Prime Minister, birthed the first-time provision of a public defender's division. What is that? If your lawyer is not going to be available, your counsel of choice, if statistically it results in the abortion of trials, if you can't get the criminal justice system moving, then you need to have competent counsel. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to say, at 23 Stanmore Avenue, the Office of the Public Defender is being built out as we speak now. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to tell you that we have created 50 positions for lawyers in the Public Defender's Division. So while they coulda, woulda, shoulda, Madam Speaker, I'm telling you now about what has been done, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we didn't stop there. 95% of prosecution in this country is done by the TTPS. What do? Not no plenty for 20 plan like Siparia comes with, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we came forward and we said, let us make them clothed in law with the capacity to prosecute. And Madam Speaker, we did that in the Criminal Division Act. But we went further. We said to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, you need to have specialists in your employ. And Madam Speaker, I can tell you, right next door in Tower C stands a white-collar division under the management of expert attorneys from the United Kingdom and 40 white-collar forensic accountants and analysts, Madam Speaker. Why are they now all special reserve police? We learned the lesson from Piarco. In the Piarco matter, Bob Lindquist couldn't give the evidence. He had to lean in and go through a policeman. But Madam Speaker, if you make the prosecutor or the lawyer a policeman, you skip past that hurdle. And they can therefore manage the evidence themselves. Madam Speaker, not coulda, woulda, shoulda, spin the wheel plan like Naparima. I'm telling you what is in operation next door to this building. Madam Speaker, we jumped in the supporting officer structures by doing something. Naparima is making a joke about intelligence, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, intelligence is the underwriting of evidence. And the Minister of National Security and the previous Minister of National Security both deserve a commendation under the hand of the Chairman of the National Security Council, the Honorable Prime Minister, for managing intelligence efficiently, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what time do I end in full time?
You have an additional 10 minutes after 4:55:30. So I
Thank you,
don't know if
Madam
you want to
Speaker.
make the application now for the additional 10
May I
minutes.
please?
Yes, and therefore you
Right,
have the
so I
additional
end
10
in full time at 5:10? 5:05.
5:05, yes.
Much obliged. I must hurry. Madam Speaker, after you get to this position, you got the prosecutors, you have defense lawyers, you have judges, you have court rules, you have buildings. Madam Speaker, where are you getting a witness from? Who is coming forward? Siparia was bold-faced enough in her intellectual presentation today to tell this country we must protect whistleblowers. Madam Speaker, Siparia led the charge where the statement was informants are not permitted, was it? Snitches are for dead, using the Jamaican expression. Snitches are for dead is what they said. Madam Speaker, they voted down the whistle protection legislation, Madam Speaker. And protection legislation. And Madam Speaker, as we stand now, we have a special select committee looking at the evidence bill. What's the evidence bill about? Anonymous witness evidence. Using CCTV evidence, camera evidence as first-hand non-hearsay evidence. Why? Where are you getting a witness from? Why not use the technology, Madam Speaker, to have the facial recognition, the cameras working? But Madam Speaker, we didn't stop there. Madam Speaker, you have to declog the environment. And I'll talk about two things quickly there. You have 146,000 cases per year coming through the magistracy. 146,000 cases. 104,000 of those cases, Madam Speaker, are motor vehicle and road traffic offenses alone. Madam Speaker, we came to the Parliament and we passed law, red light camera enforcement, demerit systems. We converted offenses into violations. Why is that system about to be launched next month? Why? Pray tell, Madam Speaker. Because if you take from 146,000, 104,000 cases out of that, Madam Speaker, you are left, Madam Speaker, with a massive reduction in the caseload at the magistracy. But Madam Speaker, we didn't stop there. You have 29,000 preliminary inquiries per year in the magistrates' court. How about if you got rid of the preliminary inquiries? 146,000 minus 104,000, Madam Speaker, minus 29,000. But Madam Speaker, we didn't stop there. Forensic analysis says that 76% of the workload that they engage in, 76% of the workload that they engage in is analyzing plant-like substances under 60 grams. There are other offenses, selling rotten tomatoes. The decriminalization of laws that can be decriminalized, Madam Speaker, means we go from 43 magistrates in 13 courts looking at 146,000 cases, and we convert that by the law that we have passed and that we are operationalizing this year, we convert that into 12,000 cases, Madam Speaker. 43 magistrates looking at 12,000 cases in a fully computerized environment that has already started as of September this year. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me jump quickly. These are processes and legislative quickening. This is not theory, this is actuality, purchased by named legislation, cabinet notes, bills, payments, underwritten. Madam Speaker, after you get that wheel moving, the proper mechanism moving, Madam Speaker, you've got now to plug in your hard crimes. That's why we have brought the Anti-Gang Act. That's why we have brought the bail restrictions. That's why we brought anti-terrorism. That's why we brought sexual offenses. I could name the umpteen pieces of law that we have already enacted, Madam Speaker. But after that, Madam Speaker, Naparima. Naparima says to us, they talk about nothing to deal with white collar. Madam Speaker, I just told you about the special prosecutors. I told you about the specialist court. The criminal division bill gives you that specialist court. But Madam Speaker, I don't know if Naparima was asleep for the entire time, the last 4 years. Madam Speaker, let me just try and ring a bell here. Unexplained wealth, civil asset forfeiture, FATCA legislation, amendment to the Income Tax Act, the Global Forum package, the proceeds of crime, miscellaneous provisions amendments. Madam Speaker, I only now start to call them. Madam Speaker, in that whole matrix of laws, there is evidence to be found. We had a tax amnesty in 2.5 months. We procured $2.4 billion worth of payments when you'd normally get $600 million. Why? Just so people decide to be generous all of a sudden? Did it have anything to do with the upcoming launch of a revenue authority? Did it have anything to do with civil asset forfeiture, explain your wealth legislation? Did it have to do with the Attorney General's office's management of the cases before the Tax Appeal Board, which we won? Which said to the oil and gas sector, there's a different team paying attention. Did it have anything to do with the Honorable Prime Minister leading the charge and convening the Energy Subcommittee of Cabinet, whilst the member for Siparia never even sat in one, and going to the boardrooms of the oil and gas companies to say, hey, we paying attention to our business. The question is, what is our net take? Not what the price of oil is and the price of gas is. How much are we getting for our sales? That is how you collect $2.4 billion in taxes and an amnesty, Madam Speaker. Not by guesswork and plenty for 20, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when you move beyond the white-collar arrangements, Madam Speaker, we have a powerful ministry in this country. It's called the Ministry of Legal Affairs. The golden pot that this country has that nobody paid attention to except the Minister for Planning when she sat there. And my learned friend who was sabotaged, the member for St. Augustine, and I'll tell you why. Madam Speaker, the evidence of crime. Siparia wants to know why the perception of corruption has fallen. Madam Speaker, has gone in the wrong direction. Madam Speaker, when you start to put out in the public domain that you have $22.5 billion in suspicious action coming from the FIU, what do you expect them to do? Not to say, well, in 2016 they report in plenty, 2017 they report in plenty. Madam Speaker, the first step to treatment and recovery is diagnosis, you know. You don't diagnose cancer, pretend you don't have it, tell them you have a headache and die. You go out and you say the good, the bad, and the ugly. And therefore, the perception of corruption must go in the wrong direction when you are revealing in a transparent way the statistics. So, Madam Speaker, let me tell you why St. Augustine was sabotaged by the UNC. Madam Speaker, there are 3 registries in the Ministry of Legal Affairs. Civil registry, births, deaths, marriages, etc. Companies registry, which is all forms of incorporated and partnership arrangements, and the land registry. Where you hiding money? Land, companies, cash. How are you going to find it? If you're operating down at the Red House, every time the rain fall, you're rushing for sandbag, you're shoring up the positions. Madam Speaker, first thing we did, we moved out of the Red House. Sorry, we moved out of South Key. I remember when we was at the Red House. Moved straight up to the unoccupied building that was there under the Prime Minister's direction. You will move and occupy. Madam Speaker, I want to say now, one of the greatest accomplishments that the AG's office performed in our tag team arrangements, Minister Young, Minister Hines, and myself, the Registrar General, Madam Speaker, we moved 11 million deeds, 200,000 company documents, and 3 million records for births and death in 1 month and reopened. 1 month. But we didn't stop there. We digitized the registry. We replaced what was sabotaged under St. Augustine. Madam Speaker, you ever hear about a Curtis Mattis television? You know that big box television in the old days with a big knob? That's what our computer system looked like down at the Registrar General. 12 daisy chain Windows XP systems working in a link. No backup, no redundancy measure. Madam Speaker, we have already launched the beta version of the Property Business Real Estate Solution, October this year. Madam Speaker, we have already signed the contract for the replacement of the company's registry. We are right now at the cusp of launching online payments for all the Registrar General services. But the value in there, Madam Speaker, is the documentary evidence. Not the kind that Siparia misread where it's 3 parties and it's really 4, Madam Speaker. We're talking about actual records. Why? For unexplained wealth, for civil asset forfeiture, for income tax, you need to have access to documentation. So, Madam Speaker, when we come this year and we bring forward a unitized digital number for every citizen, it's because we digitize every license plate, every driver's license, all births and deaths, all companies, Madam Speaker, and we are now at the cusp of going public with our Property Business Real Estate Solution, Madam Speaker. Talk, plenty for 20, gallery, Naparima walkout, hogwash, Madam Speaker, speculation on the part of the UNC. I am talking delivered measures by this government, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that's why we have a non-profit organization law to treat with that situation that we saw publicly recently. Who opposed it? But Madam Speaker, what upset me today was to hear Siparia talk about, oh, we'll innovate the country. Madam Speaker, does Siparia know that the Electronic Transactions Act was passed in 2011? No. 2012, nothing. 13, nothing. 14, nothing. 15, we passed the regs. The Electronic Transactions regulations were passed in 2015. Nothing. We came to do electronic payments into and out of court. Who said no? Siparia. Naparima stood up and said, oh, they're looking after the 1%. Who was the 1% shareholder? Jerry Hadid. Ooh. A past member. Madam Speaker, why would I want to prejudice a man in proper business offering a service for the WePay structure? Because of that program, because of that system, there's no more maintenance line payment and $4 million in cash in the drawer. And on the back of that system, Madam Speaker, iGov has now purchased the reward for electronic payments across Trinidad and Tobago. And when you get your ticket in the mail, and you get your structures coming at you, and you realize that in the comfort of your home, in your pajamas or lack thereof, that you can actually pay your fines, fees, and submissions online, Madam Speaker. Remember, the UNC said no, the PNM said yes. Remember, they talked and we did. Madam Speaker, I want to compliment a product the judiciary, Madam Speaker, and I take no credit for this one, the judiciary under the hand of Chief Justice Chief Justice Archie, to Nigeria, procured a piece of software for free. Big news. Gerald Ramley then in the Senate, why is the Chief Justice traveling so much and what's going on? Madam Speaker, that software returned to Trinidad and Tobago. It has now been developed in Trinidad and Tobago, bespoken by Trinidad and Tobago in-house IT in the judiciary. It has been the backbone of something called TTJIM. TTJIM. That's the name of it. It replaces TTGEMS. That's the judicial management software. That software allows us to file documents electronically, to receive court orders electronically, pay fees and structures electronically. That system is being put in the TTPS and DPP's office, Madam Speaker. And I intend to introduce a bill into Parliament as soon as the budget is done with the Cabinet's approval for a final tweak to the abolition of preliminary inquiries as we treat with how we move indictments. Because there's a delay in indictments. It takes about 4 years for an indictment to be offered sometimes. Madam Speaker, that single piece of software is now underwritten by the world wanting to have that software developed right here in Trinidad and Tobago and replicated across ministries. You see, Madam Speaker, I'll say this respectfully. Freudian slip coming out of the mouth of Pointe-a-Pierre, Madam Speaker, when he offered the submission that the UNC would not support something because they finally understand the pieces of the puzzle coming together. Yes, Madam Speaker, we have had a strategy. But Madam Speaker, we don't trust wicked people. And when you reveal your strategy too soon and people run to the court to fight you down, threaten to go to the court where they're exposing themselves to wasted cost orders, as Siparia does, Madam Speaker, we like to keep our cards close to our chest because I can tell you this. This government will be the only government that will have opened over 70 courts in 4 years. This is the only government that would have delivered electronic payments and filings and innovation. This is the only government that approached the plant and machinery, people, processes, law. We operationalized all at the same time. Madam Speaker, this hasn't happened by mistake, you know. So, Madam Speaker, we could give a very good account of ourselves. I've got 5 minutes. I turn, Madam Speaker, to the beautiful, marvelous city of San Fernando. I am pleased to have a capable member of Parliament as my other side of San Fernando in the person of the Honourable Minister of Tourism, the member for San Fernando East. And Madam Speaker, I would like to say to the Honourable Prime Minister, the Minister of Planning, the Minister of Works and Transport, the Minister of Finance, in particular, Minister of Public Utilities and Housing. Madam Speaker, we took this nebulous, the waterfront. For 40 years, San Fernando spoke about the waterfront. Ask them what are the elements of the waterfront, they don't know. Some reclamation of land somewhere down in the sea, if you're lucky. Sadiq Bak started it, Madam Speaker. No plans, no drawings, some earth in the ground. Madam Speaker, let me tell you what we did. We took San Fernando and we said, let us create growth poles and anchors. Let's identify this plan. And very quickly put, Madam Speaker, we decided housing was a priority, employment was a priority, jobs and security. And right there along the waterfront stretch, the position that is referred to as the waterfront, going from Mbakade right down to the wharf proper, Madam Speaker. What do we have? From Rudal Cemetery. What do we have? Opposite the best water in the world. 14 acres of land occupied by a bus shelter. Garage, oil, sludge, no employment. Vagrants. People in insecure tenure. A car park that can't be used, mudslide next to the point. Madam Speaker, we have already identified, placed into UDICOT's hands, 14 acres at the PTSC bus yard. That is now nearly 95% complete. They moved to OAS Constructura. We've identified lands at Mbakade opposite Rudal Cemetery. 231 homes there, Madam Speaker. That project was originally earmarked to the Chinese, better value for money arrangements can be had, and that is now moving instead into an open position. We took Plaza San Carlos, Madam Speaker, we've identified the informal settlement. We've already done the location of a fishing port at the Hatter's Panyard. We have started the redevelopment at Skinner Park at $200 million. We have already given UDCOT the position of the car park facility, Madam Speaker, at the San Fernando General Hospital, and the Anglican Church has approached us for development of its site on Chancery Lane. Madam Speaker, in short, that project is now identifiable. The procurement cycles have gone ahead, and the Ministry of Works and Transport has now put itself in a position, all things being equal, that we can do our road development network. San Fernando is excited for the first time, and that combination of effort, led by the Honorable Prime Minister, taking more structures into that position, breathe a sigh of relief for a city forgotten and punished by the UNC, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish I had another hour to tell you the rest, but regrettably I must end, and I thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, man. Lawyer first, let the courts do what they have to do. Madam Speaker, let me just say, I generally like to listen to my learned friend from San Fernando West. But he lost me, and I'm sure he lost many, when he started by castigating unfairly the leader of the opposition, when certainly in her earlier parts of her remarks this morning, she referenced an issue of 4.4 billion plus, and she said US dollars. And I am certain my learned friend, as honorable as he is, must have left the chamber. He might have been disturbed by the member, or the Minister of Finance or something, when in fact he did not hear the honorable leader of the opposition correct herself on the record of Hansard. And for those who may not have listened in, the contribution of a learned friend as he opened would have sounded damning, as they are wont to, on members of the opposition, as if they give untruths, as if they lie, and as everything unholy under the sun. But what is the truth? There was an error which was corrected, admitted by the leader of the opposition. I ask on the other side, who on your side has never erred? Who on your side has come forward and said, we made a mistake? That is one of the hallmarks of the PNM. They're wrong, and they're strong, and they go down as if all that they do is good and noble. Unfortunately, in this country, as divided as the politics is, as divided as our people have become, it is necessary sometimes to sift through a lot of the propaganda so that we get down to the essential truths. The Curtis Mattis computer or TV you spoke about, learned Attorney General. If you complimented my successor in the ministry, well, we inherited that Curtis Mattis from her. But what is more disturbing is that that old building that we were occupying, and we made tremendous use of, and if you, the member for Aruka will tell you that sometimes over 2,000 persons would visit that building to conduct their daily business. What we met when we arrived, I could tell you this, and I remember it clearly because I had been told that when we were sworn in, after then, we were at Office of the Prime Minister, and then we'd go to relevant ministries, and that the permanent secretaries would generally have a little reception for you there. And as we drove into the back, I saw an old tent with chairs strewn about, and I thought, oh my God, the party had, you know, we had run late, and everything had been, it was, basically. When I walked into the ministry, you got that smell of an old hospital, of rotting paper and so. The place was as dank and as dismal as you could ever imagine. And what that shed outside was for the population who came there, the hundreds of them, who were never properly accommodated. And it troubles me to have to go through all the details again, but just to put things in perspective. that ministry would entertain persons from Cedros to Scarborough, from Toko to Guayari, because they did not have access to many of the functions in different offices throughout the length and breadth of this country. So we had to fix all of that. And to fast forward to let you know, and I'm sure if my lady had the pleasure of visiting the ministry after we had taken office, within the first year or so, we were able to distribute documents in a matter of minutes and not of months and of years. That is a notorious fact in the country. And the reason I put this in the context is that we had to use this building not because we didn't want to go to the Ministry of Legal Affairs Towers, you know. The hundreds of millions of dollars that the former government had spent building those towers, you know what happened? When we took keys for that, we also took a list of 200 defects in the building. 200 defects that had to be repaired, had to be brought up to standard before anybody could even consider outfitting, before anybody could consider occupying. Now, sometimes I wonder, if we, when we are born, we believe that all that Trinidad and Tobago is today came about by a wish, by a fantasy, or if there had not been generations that had come before us and worked hard and had brought us to a stage and we moved to the next step. I know my friend from San Fernando West is not a greedy man. Some may say otherwise, but I will say no. Sometimes you plant a seed. You have to nurture it, put it in the right ground, water it, ensure it gets proper sunlight, and the plant slowly grows, ultimately to a point where it may start to bear fruit. Sometimes the fruit may be yet green. And then you know this the thing in this country, the Zabuka, when you think it's a little too green, the fellow who's ready to come and pick it and find so. I would not accuse my learned friend from San Fernando West of being a pretty larcenist. I will not do that. But to say, without reflection, that the millions of records that he was able to transfer from one building to the other, we had prepared them. They were there, right? To speak of the millions of documents that had been digitized, shamelessly, I wondered what happened, and I congratulate my learned friend, yeah? But what was the mindset of administrations prior? When we walked into the registry, I told you that rotting smell we got. You know what it was? The smell of deeds rotting literally in the vault. We went in there, and there's a route of title that you require, minimum 20 years. And there were many older documents that we dared not touch, because as you touched them, they fell apart. So we took a decision early in the proceedings that we needed to ensure we secured those documents, because that might be the only document showing ownership in property. To that end, it was not a simple thing. It's not a matter of grabbing it and photocopying it. Specialized equipment to preserve the old and rotting paper needed to be acquired. Expertise to do these things were necessary. And my friend well knows that we required international assistance to do that, funding and equipment and a host of things. And the ministry, while we were there, had continued that progress right up until the learned friend had the great honor of receiving all of the work that we had done. So it is not as if by the snap of his finger it happened. But I could understand why he will want to believe that, because the nitty-gritty is what matters, and the devil is in the details. And all of the work that we had done then, I am grateful that he was able to take some credit for it, because I want the country to be better. But we have done so much, and it is really unfair to suggest that he met things in decay. What I will also tell you is that we took a decision where we opened offices throughout the length and breadth of this country. In every regional corporation, we took an office so that we will not have our citizens having the torture of leaving Cedros to come to Port of Spain. The first office we opened was in Point 14. We opened in Diego Martin. We opened in Arima. We opened in Sangre Grande. We opened in Pinal. We opened in Chaguanas. And all of the regional corporations.
Acknowledge it.
Right? And we are grateful to the regional corporations for having donated an office to us free of charge. And we used staff who were at the ministries and located them there. We put internet and computers so our population had easy and quick access. What we also did is that we allowed our, and I have to fast track, there was so much that had been done. The registrant team went to different parts of this world, in London, in New York, in Toronto, and some of the other centers, and worked with the high commissions and embassies there so that citizens need not have come back to Trinidad for certain documents. We would have been able to, when they apply online, we were able to mail it out to them directly, free of charge for your first document. There were times when interviews would have been required. For instance, where there was a query on your identity or whatever. So we put Skyping in those places so that they need not have come to Trinidad. Because one of the main problems that we had found was that many of our citizens had gone into America, as an example, and they had not yet received their papers. This was pre-Trump days, of course. And sometimes their passport would have expired. And in America, to cash a check, you sometimes needed 2 forms of ID. If your passport is expired and you don't have a passport, you wouldn't be able to cash a check. And sometimes to get a passport, you have to come to Trinidad, but your passport expired. So what did we do? We took a very people-centered approach to this thing. And our foundation in government, the reason I came and all of my colleagues who I worked with, was always about finding the problems of the people and fixing them. Some of which were expensive and others were not that much, like this example, but it meant a whole lot to hundreds and thousands of our citizens who could not come home, and simple things like that. I could go through the rituals of telling you that one morning I received a call, and I'm very proud actually about this simple thing. When persons will line up in their dozens, sometimes in their hundreds, from early in the morning, whether it is rainy or just beautiful weather. And we took a decision that whatever any one of our citizens came to our offices, it would be open and be allowed in. We created a whole suite, well comforted with proper chairs and coffee and biscuit and water and so. So it was a people's ministry. What we did in San Fernando too is that we put all of the necessary services in that, and it became a full-fledged ministry. We did the same in Arima, and certainly we strengthened Tobago in our offices there. But what happened, I don't know, and I know my little friend, as busy as he is as Attorney General. Leoto Street, is that in San Fernando West, my friend? Yeah. Yes, it is. We got disturbing reports from many of our citizens in this last year or two. We're moving, finally. Because when we took office in 2010, we inherited Leoto Street. It was congested. It was in a state of dismal disarray. If you thought Port of Spain was bad, it is far worse. And especially you find that often in things south of the Caroni Bridge, where government institutions are allowed to rot. And we took steps and we upgraded it dramatically because we were tied in to a lease. We were tied in and we could not have moved. We would have lost a lot of money. And we were hopeful then to have better buildings. And I'm happy to hear my little friend has finally unleashed himself from that lease, because that building was wholly inadequate. I can't remember when it was that they first took occupation of that place, because there's no car park. And in fact, I looked at a video a little while ago of the hundreds of citizens who have to be out in a shed just like we had it up here, but there was no room to do better for them. I heard there was a rat infestation not long ago, and a host of horrific experiences that people have, where sometimes they return 3-4 days before they could get documents, because it is the one office in South now that could help them. And hundreds will go, and of course the staff can accommodate only so many in one day. And you have to return day after day, and we go through this thing like when you're a long time, you have to go to American Embassy, and people reach in there 3-4 o'clock just to get a space that day. Oh God, in this modern day.
pay at
So
all.
when we started the process of making applications on your computer, the laptops that we gave to our children wasn't just meant for the children. It was meant for the family and sometimes our village. So there was an enveloping vision as to how we would have modernized the society to make accessible government services through computers, and many families couldn't even think about buying books when we came in, but they were able to get a free computer and they had access to this world. And all of the institutions, we were able to put at least as many as we could have. We built, my friend likes to speak about building capacity. That is what we started in different ministries. The single electronic window and a host of other things, so that wherever you are, whatever hour of the night you were able to do it, you could go online and make applications, at least starting with the Ministry of Legal Affairs. And the vision was to move that forward. In terms of electronic payment, my friend will tell you, as he's an honorable man, the amount of work, not just in legislation, but the backbone to make that happen had gone in. But there was a resistance from one of our institutions, and I will not name it, that did not want electronic payment. A government institution, a constitutionally protected institution that did not want it. But we fought and we fought, and we were able to have achieved movement along there. So my friend once again inherited the work that we had done. We move forward. In relation to, my friend kept speaking about 400 billion spent and not a courtroom. I will deal with the court as a separate head. But let me just start by saying there is now a very unhealthy comfort between this government and the judiciary. I am saying that. I stand by that statement because somebody has to say it. There is now a matter before the court, and I will not go into it, except that the government, through its prime minister, for whatever reason, good or bad, chose not to, after the prodding of some of the finest and most decent and honorable people in this country, that there should be a proper investigation into our present Chief Justice under Section 137. The Prime Minister, as is his remit, has decided that he will not trigger it, and there is now a judicial proceeding to determine that. Now, the reason I speak of the judiciary is that that is one component of the awful rot that the People's Partnership met in 2010. We had, member for Caroni, for Chaguanas West. One of the first things we did is to lay pipeline into the heartland of Trinidad and Trinidad. And we did work in Tobago also in terms of water provision. 250,000 of our citizens got water for the first time, or at least reliable service for the first time under the People's Partnership.
Today is water for none.
Now we'll talk about water everywhere except in your pipes.
Right.
Now, Madam Speaker, I do not know if you enjoy driving around this country, or if you do, when you do fly in, member for La Haqueta Talparo knows full well. Because we took a decision that the people of Trinidad and Tobago must share in the wealth of this nation. And we hear this thing about oil having gone to, member for Urupuch, what, 150 was it? Yeah? But for the first time, this country saw a government that ensured that every community in this country was touched by its government. So that we had 200 member for Caranese, 200 grounds that were prepared, fixed, lit, with exercise equipment and a host of other, we created spaces for the community to become communities again. Walking tracks, I've been reminded. Pavilions. And you know what? In those good old days, only 5 years ago, you would have gone around this country and you would have seen the hundreds and thousands of citizens enjoying the community spaces. Now there is almost a state of emergency curfew in this country. As soon as it starts to get dark, the only thing that's out there is the lights. Maybe we'll need some of the bulbs to ensure that when those lights go out, because there's poor maintenance. Minister of Public Utilities maybe take some from the Minister of Finance and keep it, because I saw the cricket last night. Once that the lights gone out, I get frightened and worried.
Yes.
International embarrassment almost occurred down at the Taruba Stadium. Sorry, Brian Lara. No, I didn't come. I did not go.
They were there, they were there.
I did not go. Right? So that we have a situation where, thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, and sometimes we forget as we on that. I'm happy you opened your mouth, Untitled West. Taruba Stadium. How much was the original cost, Europich? How much it ended up to be?
$1.2 billion.
From 3 how much?
65,
To 1 point how much?
2 billion.
That is value for money.
And worse than that. When anything go wrong, they blame the UNC.
Was the tsunami shelter.
The rains that came the day before, people were worried they were going to blame the flooding on the UNC again.
Yeah.
Now, if they are to blame, take the blame. But oh, gosh, man, let me be real a little bit now. Yeah.
Shelter.
This morning, the leader of the opposition, because there's so much to talk about, and very often we forget our history. Tobago, our beloved sister isle. Yes, I love Tobago. Not only people who live and born and grow in Tobago love Tobago. I want to make that very clear. And this kind of proprietary insolence you have, that because you're there, that everybody else, nobody else have a right to speak or love Tobago, forget about that. That's not correct. Yeah. Administration after administration. Start a hospital. How much was the original cost?
$120 million.
$120 million.
In 2000.
2000.
How many years? How many years?
16 years later.
Who finished it?
UNC.
Partnership. 800.
Member for St. Augustine, some of the other getting the impression that this is a question and answer between St. Augustine and Carinese. Member for St. Augustine, you have my ear.
Thank you very much. The point I'm making, so this demonizing of anything other than PNM has got to go. It has got to go. When, whatever name you call that hospital in Central, I born and grew up Freeport. I'm real happy that we have a, you know, an institution that could meet the needs of the people of Central and South. But it was well placed, because you know why it was well placed? We had Point Lisas.
Yes.
That generator of wealth, but one a dangerous environment with ammonia that could possibly leak, fires that could decimate the California community. Remember, for Couva South is well aware that the community is literally borderlining a nuclear bomb, almost. It got a little safer when ArcelorMittal left when you all arrived. But the point being, it was placed there with a burns unit. That was the thinking in that. And for children to have specialized, a center of excellence for them. Pediatrics. But not just that. Of course, it's not just a children's hospital. We put beds for if anybody on the industrial estate should fall ill. But if you go down there and you look across not far, what else do you see? What's the swimming academy?
The aquatic center.
The aquatic center.
The cycling
cycling
velodrome.
center. So that when we speak about, yeah, we built all of that.
The Atobolan
As the
Stadium.
member for Couva South said, the only thing they put in that whole thing was the water in the pool.
Pool and the ribbon.
And I don't think any of us, did you get an invitation? No, I
No,
don't.
no, and the ribbon.
So let's put it in context. We have started to forget that the People's Partnership government did a lot for the people of Trinidad. But it was part of a larger vision that the leader of the opposition referenced this morning. So that you will have, and the intent also was to have first-class hotels close by and create a center where international sports teams or personalities will come here because we have warm weather throughout the year. So that persons can stay there, and if anything should happen, we had the Children's Hospital would also have had sports medicine member for St. Joseph. So that was part of that thinking. And when I hear the member for Laventille West talking about they want an airport in Central. He didn't know there was always an airport in Central?
Well, I don't know about Camden.
Camden. He didn't know, they don't know, and I don't blame you for your ignorance. What I blame you for is not trying to find out. Camden has been, when I was a child, right? I think the Americans used there sometime during the Second World War even. That's where the name came from, I think. So let's have a little sense of history. And the thinking behind it is to put an airport. It was not just for luxury flights, you know. Not for the private jets alone, so that, like, when LeBron wants to come to Trinidad to check out our facilities down in Central, his private jet can land there. Helicopter takes him from there to the location at the aquatic center and that stadium. That was the thinking behind it. But the member for Chaguanas East took it, not just there, he took it off when he said, from cutting cane to flying place. Do we have any idea how much it costs to get a pilot's license in the United States? It is not cheap. And part of the vision of the People's Partnership was to modernize the society, because we knew full well that we needed to re-establish a different economy, because we knew oil and gas will come to an end one day. And in the People's Partnership, we had persons who represented who cared so much about the environment, and we figured Trinidad and Tobago cannot be hypocritical to be one of the largest producers with a carbon footprint almost unequal per capita. We needed to change and fix that, but at the same time protect and create a new economy for our children, so that they don't just go there to learn to fly. They go there so that they could be part of a universe that is uplifting. And instead of just flying out, they decide to learn to fly and to also put a drilling school so that we could export our technology. 100 years of oil experience. And who don't know it? Who doesn't know it? We have some of the brightest, best minds in this world. But what is most difficult in the last couple of years, you know what? Instead of going to Camden to learn, they have flown out of Trinidad and Tobago, possibly never to return. And that is the heartbreak many of us feel. So, money was spent on that. Money was spent on roads where there were only dirt tracks. The demonizing of box drains led us to have those floods because they didn't take care of the drainage when we had the floods of 2 years ago. My friend, the Minister of National Security, Minister of Local Government, Minister of Work, sat in an interview. I agreed with a lot of what they said about, we can't build on riverbanks and so, but blamed people indirectly for the floods in Bamboo Tree, and I will leave that for another segment, when they were not to blame. We have global climate change upon us, and it is unprecedented levels of rainfall, but not unpredictable levels of rainfall. And we cannot do those things that we used to do and fix up the whole riverbank the way we used to, because the quantity of water coming on is several times greater than it used to be. Now, Madam Speaker, my friend spoke about the courts. And I wonder, with all these new fancy streamlining and all these glitzy statements about registrars and about how many more judges and so, is this country better served by a system of justice? No. Which is the ultimate, that is what you check, that is what you test. Let me give you a little horror story, Madam Speaker, that is so significant in its simplicity, but it demonstrates to us, in a nutshell, many of the things that are so wrong with this country. 1 week ago, and this has nothing to do with the court case itself, but it has to do with the process and the administration. A gentleman was committed on a non-violent offense in the magistrate's court in San Fernando. Bail was set by the magistrate properly, and apparently he didn't quite expect the committal to go to the assizes for trial. Unfortunately, he had a heart attack. whilst in the precincts of the court holding bay, and he was taken immediately, and we thank and congratulate the police. They took him over to the San Fernando General Hospital, a building that was originally for an administrative center, not a waterfront issue, you know, remember, for San Fernando West, an administrative center. And if you had ever had the misfortune of visiting the San Fernando General Hospital, the old one, hopefully not as a patient, and certainly hopefully not as a person visiting, you'd have seen that it was horrible. And nobody wanted to be there. And we took a decision, the People's Partnership Government, to take that administrative center and make it into a first world, I almost said hotel, but you should visit it, because one of the finest institutions you will find anywhere. Anyhow, they took this gentleman there for treatment. Whilst he was there, I'm instructed, they saw symptoms of microstrokes. Minister of Health, pay attention to this one. We are told, Terrence, listen to this, please. Yeah. That the MRI machine is not working there. But hear what? This fellow had the misfortune of having the heart attack after he's committed, but before the bail was processed. So he's in police custody. Since Friday till today, there's 24/7 police presence to keep this man in police custody. So I said, oh, so the persons came to one of my juniors to see if we could assist. So I got involved in it, only to learn that the bail papers had taken several days to be approved. This is the man's sister who had taken his bail when he was first charged, had done everything, got the WASA receipts and everything up to date, but the process, Attorney General, lasted at least 2 days. And they were not ready to process the bail at that time, and therefore, he went into the hospital under police guard without the bail being processed. So I said, well, it's a simple fix. The family wanted to take him out of there because to get the MRI and to get proper medical in some private institution. So I said, no problem. So I went down to the registrar, who tells us, well, it's out of my hands. The papers, I have put it into an envelope. It is marked Commissioner of Prisons. I cannot touch it. The Commissioner of Prisons is waiting for this man up at the prisons, but he can't be transported. And they're telling us that the only way he could be bailed is that he must go to the prison for that to be done. Now, let me tell you how embarrassing this is as a lawyer of 30-odd years. All you needed was for that, what they call a committal warrant, and the approval documents, so the bail, to be brought before the registrar or whomever there. And if that person says it's okay, get a justice of the peace to the hospital and have the bail taken. But because it was addressed to the Commissioner of Prisons, the registrar said they washed their hand from it. So we are caught in a catch-22, in a dilemma of the worst proportions. We cannot get the bail accessed because the man is in the hospital, and nobody wants to take responsibility. Now, the reason I raise this, and I'm not blaming the registrars, because they are now, as we are proud to say, qualified lawyers. In fact, I was surprised, one of our members of staff here is a registrar. Unfortunately, put in a position without experience and without the confidence to exercise their discretion. In the old day, before this fancy thing about registrars and how many people in the positions, the clerk of the peace would have simply called the police and said, bring back the documents here, and I will do what need be done if you bring the man before me. I today had to run away to go and see the registrar in the court. I had to go and see the chief magistrate to try and fix this thing, and nobody wants to take responsibility. So it tells you, no matter how glitzy and glamorous it appears on the face of it, when you have functional failures like this, it tells you a whole lot about the third world mentality that we now have. So, Madam Speaker, there is so much more. In terms of the... Were you not embarrassed to... You're a lawyer first. You're also speaker. When we all saw a story in the papers last year of a High Court judge in San Fernando who said, I am not going to put my hand in my pocket again to buy paper and adjourn the matter. So all this beautiful talk, and I don't blame the Attorney General, you know. I don't blame him. I blame those who are responsible for the judiciary. Because any amount of money member for Laventille West they ask for, your government gives to them. Any amount of money they ask for us, once you could justify it, we gave to them. And you're hiring how much? 380 something more people, and you're not buying paper for the court? How topsy-turvy is that? How ridiculous is that? When I hear my friends speak about they're painting a nice picture for this budget and everything, it's not a beautiful picture, it's a whitewash. It's a cover. And you know what I really wanted to hear more than anything else in this budget debate? I wanted to hear, forgive me for being the stuck record, but I'm on record being stuck on this. Campaign and party finance reform. Procurement legislation. Let me deal with procurement right away. Because I keep hearing about corruption in the last government. Well, if you have all the, whoever do wrong, all they pay the price and go. Right? Let the system work. But there is a perception, what do you call it? Transparency International. What is that, 66% or how much perception of corruption? The people know, they know what's going on.
Yes.
2 years ago, there was the breaking of the soil, turning of the sod to build a car park across the road. Now, I don't blame business people. They see opportunities and they put their money and they take risks and they do what they have to do. And in fact, the Honorable Prime Minister himself was present at that turning of the sod. And the reason I raise this, I believe in coincidence, but I always believe there's a reason for coincidence. This building we're in, we were told not long ago, a couple of months back, is it? That here will be converted into a court, yeah? Civil court. When was that decision taken? When was that decision taken? Was it 2 years ago? Was it this year? I believe in the presumption of innocence, but I just ask questions. I remember a couple of years back, coming to this parliament itself, this elderly gentleman rushed off as fast as he could have, and he was hit by a car right across the road there. I jumped out of my vehicle. This man was bleeding from his eyes, his nose, and his mouth. And I comforted him. I did not believe that he would have made it, and I told him it's going to be all right. You need, sometimes in those moments, you need somebody to tell you it's going to be all right, even though nobody believes that it is. And I'm thinking, well, whew, but we really do need a walkover here. When was it a decision was taken to put a walkover here? 2 years ago? 1 year ago? I'm seeing the construction well advanced. Probably in time for when we move out of here and go to the Red House. I asked the question, is there a connection in the timelines of the decision to put a car park there? Is there a decision that is timeline equally to that to put a walkover in time for a government to take a policy decision to make a court to ensure that that car park will always be properly patronized? I ask questions because we have an election coming. I gave up leadership of the CUP. One of the hardest things I ever had to do, and I chose not to, was to ask for donations. You see this thing about party finance? Is at the core of a lot of the criticisms of corruption in the country. But as the Americans say, baked into our system. Because how can you run a campaign unless you have money? Where does that money come from? Not business. We are not like the Obama era where people give you, or Bernie Sanders give you $13 and $5 and make up your million. No. We hear 500 million for an election. That comes from somewhere. And he who pays the piper calls the tune. And therefore, whenever a contract is given out after an election, the people will always feel that there's favoritism in that and we never get value for money. And that is why it was the People's Partnership government that took a decision that you may not be able to eradicate corruption, but you must do all that you can to suppress it and deal with it. Member for Caroni Central, thank you for the work that you did in leading that Joint Select Committee. So if you want to say that the partnership, UNC, whomever, was only about corruption, well, why would we have put the dagger that we all spoke about into the heart of corruption, which is called procurement? Is it true, Attorney General, that when you all came into office, and I know you had nothing to do with this, because I'm hearing today something slipped out here about advisors. You have a Minister of Agriculture, but the Prime Minister hiring an advisor on agriculture? I want to tell you, Mr. Rambarat, the Minister of Agriculture is a good, strong, able fella. He may not be up to the job sometimes.
We know that. We know that.
but you're hiring advisors? Who else advising? Who else advised about the walkover? Who else advised about making hair court? Who else advised about turning sod to put or China? Right? So these are the things. So is it true that that committee that was supposed to do all the work, because the law is on the books, you know, but we needed the work done to populate the institution, to put the regulations and so develop it and put it in place. Is it true? Because I was told by a former member of that committee that you all starved them out until they resigned one by one, till they had no committee and you had to reformulate the committee.
For 2 years.
For 2 years!
Two senior members of government.
We are in our 5th year, 5th budget, and we do not have procurement legislation in our place in Trinidad and Tobago. We spent 400 billion, they say everything up, but go down to the very university and see there's concrete on the ground. Go to the Children's Hospital, go to all the stadia, you can see physical evidence of what the People's Partnership did. And I am certain, because of the system, there will be corruption some way. But the Kamala Prasad administration under the People's Partnership, with the People's Partnership, took a decision to get rid of corruption, and we did so by creating legislation. Madam Speaker, party and campaign reform. You see, one without the other is far less useful. But together, they create, you know, we heard about Mel Gibson and the Gladiator and everything else. Those two things are the warriors of our future. They will protect our children to ensure that the hundreds of billions, almost $1 trillion would have gone through this country from oil and gas for generations, that we should never have to worry about our children's future today. But something went terribly wrong, and we are the ones who started that process to fix it. Party finance reform is a must. It was promised by this government. We did work. Member for Chaguanas West had moved a motion here in this parliament to get it onto the agenda. When we went in the government, we moved on it. We had a joint select committee that did so much work, but none of that work was used to progress this thing. We keep hearing it come in, but they reach. Election reach. Money's going to spend, right? I don't know where it's going to come from. What I will tell you, though, there's a grave suspicion in my heart that it's going to come from our children's future. And the hypocrisy of many to talk, but never do the walk. Talk and no work on these crucial protectors, the vanguards of our future. Until I see that, I'm not convinced. All the beautiful courts you want to build and all the judges you want to put, justice will not be served on our children and our people unless we deal with those things. So we're dealing now, every time we come, well, I shouldn't say every time, but most times, there are a couple on the other side who always threatening colleagues on this side. Police coming by, they're going to lock you up.
Lock up.
They're tipping off non-stop.
Reading warrants. They just read warrants.
They're reading warrants. Yeah? A casual conversation, I imagine, by one of our most honorable members to a colleague. They want to turn that into a criminal act. Yeah? So anything one side does is criminal and wrong, and whatever the other side does is holy and proper. Why in a budget debate where we are today, the leader of the opposition is on her legs, and you had to get a notice we get in a local government election. When the Honorable Prime Minister had said over and over and over that this budget that come in is no election budget, he's a serious man. He cares about the future, like many of his colleagues, I am sure. But why is it that during a budget debate you will announce a local government election, not to distract from, listen, whoever has an honest bit in their heart and in their intellect will tell you that the delivery of the leader of the opposition today was spectacularly good. And for a change, she didn't absorb the insults, the barbs, the arrows with poison tips that were shot at her repeatedly. A woman of intense grace and intense, what shall I say, forbearance. Yes. But today she dropped some wood on them. Deservedly, eh? And I say, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
It was pointed.
What is, dropping wood? Yeah. Okay, whatever. She dropped some good language on you.
Yeah.
Right? So to distract from all of that, because I want to tell you, what was delivered on the other side was no budget, you know. That was a whitewash. What you heard today was a budget. Yeah. Because, I don't think I earn enough, you know, as you say. Yeah. So, let me tell you, sorry.
Member for St. Augustine, your original time is now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes to wrap up.
I'll be most grateful, thank you.
Please proceed.
Yeah. I want to put on the record, if my friends think I need to sing for supper, right? Once again, he has deluded himself. I am not interested in the things he might be interested in.
He runs for supper.
Right? He supplicates for his supper. So, I understand now my time is running out, and it may very well be, member for Laventille West, and I say so openly, may very well be my last contribution to our budget, right? I'm unafraid of it, but I'm not.
Yeah, his own too.
No, he'll do so in opposition.
No, they will be voted out.
Madam, you know, I generally enjoy my learned friends, but not certainly when we deal with matters of such importance. So, we're on the point. I want to speak about the constituency of St. Augustine. Khadija, yours too, you live right across the road. Yeah. Yeah. Some people are just, you know, that way. So, I have been honored to have been the representative for St. Augustine for the last 9, going on 10 years. And some of the most beautiful, wonderful people you will find in St. Augustine. Many of whom are unfortunate to have been born into poor circumstances, to have inherited family homes who were even poorer then, and unfortunately, they are who they are, where they are. Simple people, hardworking people, honest people. And there seems now to be this idea that you blame the victims. You blame the victims. That flood we had 3 weeks ago, in Bamboo number 3 in particular, and Bamboo number 1, member for St. Joseph, I hope he speaks about that. You have a situation where, as I repeat, unprecedented but not unexpected rainfall came. St. Joseph River broke its banks in 3 locations. Water came into the village. But suddenly you hear things about who threw stove, who threw car, washing, whatever, everything. There was nothing like that. It was just an enormous volume of water. And we had warned the Ministry of Works beforehand, months before, that the embankment of all of our rivers, because when we write, we don't just write for St. Augustine, but we send information to all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that do not just buttress the embankment to historic sizes and strength. You need to do much better, much go higher. And there was flooding. You know, I heard ministers speak about there was no flooding in Greenvale or Oropun because of the work they have done. And I'm so grateful for that. But when it happened in Bamboo, somehow or the other, it turned out it's their fault. The people of Oropun, whenever it rains, they are worried. Beautiful community. But because of poor design and construct and lack of maintenance, they get flooded out regularly. Yesterday there was water in the roads throughout most of St. Augustine. Luckily none went into the homes. So let us get away from this idea that you could get away, you are a government and you have to take responsibility. For even if people do wrong things, you have a responsibility to fix that. And as we move forward with global climate change, I ask the question, and I'm happy the Minister of Public Utilities is here. WASA is under your portfolio? Yes, honorably and happily so. When he took such great pleasure in this parliament, I remember, to say they will prosecute the farmers for abstracting water. Yeah? What were they doing? They were earning their livelihood. But that is insignificant to the more important thing, that they were giving us food security. They were taking water out of God's bounty from the river. They are using pumps, of course. I don't know if it would have been illegal if they used bucket instead. But the vastness of the work that they do required pumps. But they want to seize the people pump and charge them for it. That is your water. You want to charge them because the law says so. When those rivers overflow and go into the people's home, is that your water too? And it may sound ridiculous, but if you're taking responsibility to charge them when they take water, when your water comes in their place, you should be held accountable. Now, the reason this is serious business, could you not work with the farmers in the dry season and in the rainy season, find a system so that there's, and I understand why sometimes they may want to charge because they say they weaken the embankment. Oh, good Lord, man. Could we not have a little system where they could put a little concrete something over so their hoses could go over, not to cut the embankment, but actually to strengthen to those locations and work with them and not against them?
Why the Prime Minister advisor didn't tell him that?
Well, maybe. Well, I hope he does, and I will not charge for that bit of advice. Madam Speaker, what are we doing? We're hearing about the eradication of Styrotex cups and little bottles and everything else, and so which is really necessary. When every single year in the dry season we are told how low our water reserves are, that is bad enough. But Minister, we are told in the height of the rainy season that you have a terrible deficit. What are you doing about it? What plans do you have to redirect the floods so that we could put them into reservoirs, whether existing reservoirs or new ones? Don't tell me about highway to Toko. Tell me about water to the Navet. Tell me about how we are going to create an environment so when it rains unprecedented levels, that we're able to capture that so that when it comes that we have dry season, drought, we have a reserve of water. This is what the people of Trinidad and Tobago need. Don't tell me about how much percent we got now? 15%? Yeah? When they get caught with their pants down, they do the maths and realize, and as the leader of the opposition rightly said, you can't be talking about CPEP salaries that is less than the legal minimum wage. And it's when they do the maths, because everybody said, well, wait a minute. Even with that increase, you're lower than the minimum wage now. So you had to come up with a brilliant argument, and I am sure it was contributed to that brilliance by the Attorney General and the Minister of National Security. No, these are very intelligent men I've worked with. I admire their intellect. And they, I am sure, would have come up with the idea, well, you have to argue it that way. Because on the face of it, there was no issue that they were raising CPEP salaries to above the minimum wage. They spoke about moving CPEP and URB salaries to 15%. And when it is added up, it came to less than minimum wage. You had a legal conundrum, and my two friends, I'm sure, sorted that out for them. Why is it? Because I keep hearing this thing about election, but no, we will not have an election budget. We are serious people. We are honorable people. We believe in the future. We do not play politics to the people. But the first salary they will get is when? December 1st. When is the election? Oh my good Lord, is that possible that there could be a coincidence there? Are we to believe that this is not an election budget, as has been described by Hans Crumbs and so? It is nothing short of that, because there is no substance in it apart from that. And you believe that you are going to be able to entice people to sell their vote for $2.50 more per hour? Wow, what a contempt you have. But you know what? Sometimes it works. But it is now the duty of every right-thinking citizen to tell you, no more. We will not be fooled. We will not sell our future. Whatever the next election brings, it must bring a better governance to this country. Great is the PNM. You will continue to say that. Yeah? It is a great waste of time. It is a great failure. And the present PNM is a disgrace to the legacy of Dr. There is no philosophy underlying its movement into our future. The old PNM that many of us grew up with and respected, that has gone. I want to tell you something, Madam Speaker. The Honorable Prime Minister, when he speaks, I believe what he says, and he believes what he says. Right? But there are advisors and others who really pull the strings, who make the decisions and then advise him what to do. And as a good leader, he will take that advice, but you need to know who your advisors are. Otherwise, you will be led by the unknown, the masked, silent persons who really have power in the society. I thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, I believe there's agreement that now will be a convenient time for the suspension. We'll come back at 6:30.